where we've come, look forward to where we still have to go, and I think today really recognize the power of autistic self-advocates like Elise Muller, and the power of parents like Kellie Tait, that professionals do, because we have a lot of trust given to us by parents and their children and adult children. So I would like to start with a welcome to country and invite Deanne Gilson to deliver this for us. Please come up, Deanne.
We should put my glasses on, actually. Hi everybody, my name's Deanne Gilson, and thank you, Sean, for that. So, good afternoon, actually, I should say. So I'm here today. I'm a traditional custodian of Ballarat, and I actually, strangely enough, my eldest son actually has still has a severe intellectual disability, which has been quite challenging, but he's actually married with a child, so I've got my first grandchild, and I actually never used the word disability with bringing him up. So that's been, so I know all about this. I've lived it. So basically my ancestral family, as I was saying, we are from Ballarat, and to kind of give some perspective on that. So my mum's great grandfather was removed from Ballarat and put into a mission at age 13, and mum's family also related King Billy and Queen Mary of Ballarat, and Queen Mary ended up in Corandurk. She's actually buried in Corandurk, and King Billy's buried in the Old Ballarat Cemetery, and so on. And my nan and great grandmother were born in the Framingham Aboriginal Mission, and my mum was born in Warrnambool. So, but then when I was a child, we moved to Gordon, and the day we moved, there was all these crows. Our ancestral totem is Whale the Crow, all these crows on the fence, and Mum said, oh, they're welcoming us back to country. And as you all know, Aboriginal people have a deep connection to country and place, as do all people. We all have to embrace our home, no matter where it is, or if we're from another country, as the Canadian Sean is. There's a lot of Canadians in Ballarat, I don't know what that is, and it's fantastic. And so that connection, we say it's a spiritual connection because based in the dreaming stories and the myths, those stories were part of our real lived experience. So they were our real belief that, if you walked in front of Bunge or did the wrong thing, something bad would happen to you. So that's why that spiritual connection has some reality, even though it seems ghost-like and airy-fairy. It's quite real. I better do welcome. So in language, Nayada Wadi Nadik Dian, Wadarang Danuk, Mak Burian Wadarang Begurk, Manamith Mirbian Nalinga Wadarang Bek. So basically what I'm saying in language is, hi, I'm Deanne Gilson, and I'm a proud Wadarang woman. So, welcome to country ceremonies had been practiced pre-colonisation for thousands of years, and my sister, she was just saying, now they're saying up to 125,000 years Aboriginal people have been here, and first we used to say, we know for a fact several thousands of years in Ballarat there's evidence of our ancestral link, which is still amazing, but now it's gone way out, far more than that. So basically, welcome to, for me, I always think it's my mum's generation at Miss, but my mum did do the first welcome in Ballarat 20 years ago, but she didn't get the opportunity for reconciliation and healing. But my generation, I was born in 67, so a very important year. So I believe that I'm part of that reconciliation. Also, I shouldn't be giving you a history lesson. Also, back then too, when we do lots of repatriation of our bones, and And there was also some of my ancestors dug up for scientific reasons in 1967. So I find it ironic that, you know, am I celebrating my life or what? You know. Anyway, so welcome everybody today to our ancestral country, and I pay my respects to my ancestors, elders past, present and emerging, and any other First Nations people that may be in the room today also. So I want to just give you a banjul blessing and then leave you guys to it. So, Miwan Bingongi King King Bill, Gordi Gargon Woolly Wadaranja, Nalinga Ek Bully Gully Begurk, Kimbani Darabagurk, Yanking We Eat Wadaranja, Umalik Manamith Mirambena, Umalik Bulleted Murat Bonjul. So Banjul the eagle, our creator spirit, is basically, it's just like a little blessing, and it's really saying that we should all care for each other and this country, and especially our children, the most important thing. So, fantastic. So basically, Kimbani is welcome, and let's all walk together and live together and find peace together. So thank you everyone for having me.
Thank you so much, Deanne. Thank you very much. And she has to run home to look after a 15-year-old child.
A 15-year-old who's at McDonald's with a girl. So, not good. Yes, he's that age. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening. Thank you.
So obviously I'm from Canada, if you're guessing the accent. And coming to Australia, I really thought doing the Welcome to Country is really beautiful. And as Deanne said, that connection to country and to land, especially for us that play sport on a regular basis. And I guess at the end of the day, what we want to do is, as she said, live in peace, and we want to support the next generation, the kids. And so that's what we're somewhat going to cover today, is the ability, how can we use sport to support inclusion and diversity. And the reason why I have this photo, I was lucky enough to attend the ISPS Handa World Cup of Golf that was in Moorabbin. And so it is a nice photo of the Kulin Nation flag and the Aboriginal flag, but this was also it was the second golf tournament. Sydney beat us to it. But it was the second golf tournament where players with disability golfed alongside the PGA professionals. So pretty cool, inclusive sport opportunity there. So you maybe wonder who I am, because sometimes I forget to introduce myself. Other than being Sean and Canadian, I have a really fantastic job where I get to work in the state government for Sport and Recreation Victoria, focused on sport inclusion. So especially inclusion for people with disability and inclusion for people with autism. I started what I call a journey, because it's gone many different ways, working with people with autism and their families quite closely back in 2003. I really liked behavior analysis, and I thought I was going to be a really rich behavior, a sports psychologist. And I took a summer job working with families very selfishly. I thought this summer job is going to look great on a CV. I'll work with these kids with autism. I don't even know what autism is, but it's behavior psychology principles. And within a few days, I was just blown away by the degree of potential that the kids had and the warmth of the families. And I switched all my classes for the next year, switched to night classes, and I just kept working at that clinic. It was pretty cool, and I really enjoyed it. I think being someone who has had a lot of speech therapy in my time, and I remember the frustration where you just can't communicate. And so working closely with kids and with families, you could see the exact same, that potential that if they could just communicate either through sign language or through PECS, picture exchange communication system, or using their words, it would just make it so much easier. So when I came to Australia, I was lucky enough to work at Autism Victoria, and then I moved to University of Melbourne to manage an autism research team where I got to do some really cool things and learn lots at the Royal Children's Hospital. And I still wanted to know more about research. I wanted to be a more independent, critical thinker, and the whole time I always thought that we're underestimating the power of sport. We work our butts off to do early intervention, but then we're missing the boat to generalize all the OT and the speech therapy and the ABA therapy into the real world, and sport can be an amazing tool where it's not focus solely on social time, but there is a social element to activity-based socialization. So I was lucky enough, somehow a Canadian got a scholarship with the AFL, and I got to study AusKick. And so for the last 2 years before joining Sport and Recreation Victoria, I studied AusKick and how we can reduce barriers and increase facilitators for kids who have developmental disability. So while we see a lot of benefits of physical activity, we know there's social benefits, there's benefits for mental health, there's benefits socially, and if you're like me and you're lucky enough to get paid, there's economic benefits as well through this. But at the end of the day, we see sport and access to culturally significant activities and physical activity as a human right. It's not just a nice thing to do, it is the right thing to do, and the Victorian Equal Opportunity Act expects us to make reasonable modifications so that everybody can join in physical activity, culturally significant activities, and sport. This is a photo from the Cricket Inclusion Carnival, where Kellie was the team manager for Team Victoria, and I do talk a little bit. This is the parliamentary inquiry into the provision of services for autism. There was 101 recommendations following the parliamentary inquiry, and it's nice to say that a lot of the recommendations come out of really identifying problems in the provision of services. But the Access All Abilities program that's run by Sport and Recreation Victoria was seen as something that's working well and something that we should continue investing in and continue to expand. So I'm happy to say over the next 4 years we'll continue doing that. Often when you go to an autism conference, you're going to hear maybe about in 1943, Leo Kanner did this, Bruda Bettelheim did that, and they're all really old psychiatry people that were good, but what I really like to focus on are the autistic self-advocates, the parents, and the people who stay awake at night, making it all the better. And so this is a good opportunity to acknowledge all the work that parents and autistic self-advocates do all around the world, and just to say thank you for everything you guys provide to us as professionals. This is a picture of Joan Curtis, who's from Mansfield. Joan was told that her son had autism and not to worry, there was institutions for children like that, just send your child away and everything would be fine. But luckily, Joan didn't accept that. Joan pushed the envelope and Joan eventually created Mansfield Autism Statewide Services. And so thanks to a mom, we have a really good service, and she pushed the envelope like a lot of other mothers have. In Victoria, we have FIDA, the Football Integration Development Association. It's now 30 years old. It's been running since 1988. Across Australia, we have Autism Awareness Australia, started by Nicole Rogerson, another great mum. We have Autism Swim, started by Erica Gleason from Sydney. We have AAA Ballarat with Kellie Tait. We have Furbank All-Stars running out of the posh suburb in Melbourne that I forget, Brighton, sorry. And we have Snap Soccer and Snap Smart Sports, also run by another fantastic mum, fantastic parents, Alison and Chris Gately, and we have a lot of other fantastic people. Of course, we have Wen Lawson and Donna Williams, who are fantastic Victorians who started, who wrote books about their perspectives of autism back in the 70s and 80s. And so a lot of what we know today is because of the work that they did back then. We also have the ICANN network. We have some really great researchers at Deakin, at La Trobe, ACU. We have autism genetics research out of University of Melbourne. And we have a lot of just diverse range, whether it's sport or it's genetics. There's a lot happening here in Victoria, and you're going to hear today from 2 researchers at Federation Uni. This is a great photo from the Northern School of Autism. They had the chance to go on the Kids on Court at the Rod Laver. I think I was more excited to be on the Rod Laver court than they were, and I was the last one off, and they actually had to come back and get me because I was still taking pictures. But it's pretty cool to be able to see and talk to the kids and to see how excited they are. I guess now I don't work in early intervention anymore, and so I do go weeks and weeks without getting to hang out with the kids every now and then, and so this was a great experience to play tennis on rough labor with the kids and their families and to see how happy they were. And so thanks to a tennis coach, Yvonne and Vicky, and Tennis Victoria, Tennis Australia, they really believe in inclusion and diversity, like so many of our sports do. We also, today we're going to show a video. Maria Strong is a Paralympian with cerebral palsy as well as autism, and Ben Carbonaro has autism, and he's a self-advocate with the ICANN network, and he's currently employed with the AFL umpires department, so you're going to hear from them after our break. And then we also have Michaela Cook here from Hockey Victoria, and she's going to stick around at the break, and if you're interested in hockey and anything coming up in Ballarat in the future, please chat with her. So these are the people I get to chat with all the time. As we go through today, especially for the parents, you guys know autism far better than we do. We always say that if you met one person with autism, you met one person with autism, because everybody is so unique and so different. When it does come to autism, though, it's rarely is it only just autism. There's usually something else. We know that almost a quarter of people have ADHD, a quarter of people have oppositional defiance disorder, and we know that 70% of people also have sensory dysfunction. And so we need to consider this when we are working with people, especially on noisy playgrounds, in pools, where there's a lot of echoing, there's fans, there's music going, at 10-pin bowling when there's pins crashing, and all of that. So it's never just autism. While there are all these numbers, though, I've stolen this from Surfers Healing out of the US, and they say, well, there's all these numbers that we can be bombarded with, that autism is 1 in 68, maybe it's 1 in 50, maybe it's 3%. We have these numbers as 75% have sensory dysfunction. All we have to remember is just one. We just have to think about the one person in front of us, and we need to think about their name. We need to think about what they like, what they don't like, what they're good at, what their goals and aspirations are, and they've got a family that love them and want them to do well, and if they like sport, then that's cool. We want to do our best to make sure that they're involved and feel included. So that's my little 3-minute spiel, which goes a little bit longer than 3 minutes. So I'd like to invite up Kieran Thorpe, who has had the privilege of studying with at Deakin University over the last 2 years. And Kieran's going to introduce subjective well-being and tie that into how sport can help subjective well-being. Come on up, Kieran.
Yeah, Thank you, Sean. You can hear me?
Yeah.
Fantastic. I'm, like I said, I was with Sean, so I do have to give credit to my supervisors, Professor Nicole Reinhardt and Professor Robert Cummins, as well, because this project has started at Deakin, but I'm very excited to be working with Kellie and Sports, and I think it's Sports something here in Ballarat as well. Sports Central to continue some research as well. I'm also shocked that Sean has a McDonald's coffee. And being new to Ballarat, if you know a good coffee shop, let me know on the break. I'd love to know. Okay, so well-being, quality of life, these are words that we hear quite often, but what do they actually mean? In the research that I do, we term it as subjective well-being, and it means that it's the feeling about oneself that is normally positive and stable. Now, this is, I guess, important to just keep that in mind, that the term that I'm going to be using today is subjective well-being. So, when we think about well-being or subjective well-being, we have to remember that there's two components to this. There's emotions and mood. So our emotions will fluctuate, and you'll go through a range of emotions throughout the day. And emotions are related to an object. So you could be happy because you've kicked a goal playing sport, or you're happy because you've won the lottery, or you're sad because your mum has turned the TV off and you can't watch television anymore. Our emotions are related to objects. This is very different to our mood, which is a stable background, very similar to body temperature. So body temperature is 36 to 37 degrees, and we don't really notice our body temperature. And our mood's basically the same. It's there, it's in the background. We only notice it if we become really happy, or we've become like really sad, or we have really low mood. So how do we measure well-being? How do we measure mood? Over 40 years of research have gone into this scale and these items that we have now known as the Personal Wellbeing Index. So on a scale of 0 to 10, how satisfied are you with your standard of living or with what you're achieving in life? And 0 being no satisfaction at all and 10 being complete satisfaction. So when we ask people about their standard of living, we're referring to, do you have a house? Do you have those basic needs that I guess we need in society? Achieving in life is referring to, well, your goals and your aspirations. Are you achieving? So it could be related to your work, it could be related to volunteer work, but do you feel like you are achieving those goals and what those goals are to you? Personal relationships, in this aspect we're looking at the quality of your relationships, so not the quantity. So it doesn't matter how many friends you have, you need to have quality relationships and quality support. And this is really important because in times of stress or in times of trouble, you're able to pull on those resources, pull on the quality relationships, and you're able to get that support, whether you need to sort of complain about something that's happened in your day or celebrate the achievements that have occurred. We then have safety. Now, here in Australia, safety doesn't actually play a large role in regards to our subjective wellbeing. Australia is a fairly safe country, but when we look at countries overseas and we use this index, safety does play an important role. Health is an interesting aspect in regards to our subjective wellbeing. If you've got a chronic condition, so a condition that is occurring over a long period of time and the changes are gradual, they don't actually really impact our wellbeing. And this is because the changes are occurring slowly, so we're able to adapt to those changes. So while you're young, you're able to do all these exciting things and like climb Mount Everest, but as you get older, you might not be able to do those wonderful and exciting things, but it's occurred over a slow period of time. Whereas if something is more chronic, is more acute, so if I ended up in a wheelchair tomorrow, my well-being is going to be significantly reduced. I'm not going to be used to the change that has occurred. Sense of community or feeling part of a community, whether that, for instance, is through like a sporting club or through work or through your community in general, also plays an important role. And we know this from the bushfires that occurred through 2009 and the studies that occurred following that the sense of community played a large protective factor in people's well-being. And then there's future security. So what's happening to you in the future? Do you feel like you're going to be secure in the future? So these are the things that we measure when we look at subjective well-being. Now, a quick brief context. Since 2001, the Australian Unity Wellbeing Index has measured a representative sample of 2,000 Australians every 6 months. So it's measured their subjective wellbeing. And the data set is in well over 60,000 participants. And this is also backed up by over a 10-year longitudinal study. And what happens with those 7 items on that 0 to 10 scale, we transform it to a 0 to 100 point scale. So between 0 to 100 points. And what's really fascinating from 2001 to the data I've got there on the screen, 2017, is that the Australians' well-being sits at approximately 75 points. We don't see much dramatic change, and of course across the longitudinal studies, we don't see a great change in the participants that we follow over 10 years. So their well-being sits at about 75 points. So to us, this is quite fascinating and telling us that it's quite normal to be happy. When we look closer at the data, what we actually find when we're measuring the participants' mood or subjective well-being is that there's a range between 70 to 90 points. So the average person is sitting around 75 to 80 points. They have a set point, and throughout their day or throughout their week, they might rise a little or fall a little. We know that if someone is over 90 points, they've basically won the lottery. They're very, very happy. But that won't maintain. That will reduce to about 75, 80 points. But what's really interesting is that it's really hard for an individual to fall below 70 points. And we can throw a lot of stress at the person or a lot of challenges and it's the person's not going to fall below 70 points. However, when when the challenges become too much, there is a tipping point, and the person falls very, very quickly. So this is the most complicated scale I have, I promise, in the speech. But what's happening is all these stresses, all these challenges can be thrown at someone and can occur, and there's internal mechanisms and external mechanisms that are occurring. And so we see that as soon as you can't handle these challenges anymore, your well-being falls, and it falls very quickly, and it's sort of what we would classify as depression. So from this personal wellbeing index, we can categorise people into different categories. We can very quickly identify whether someone has a wellbeing above 70 points, and that indicates to us that they're normal, that they're happy, and that they're functioning okay. We know that people who are sort of between 50 to 69 points are at risk of depression, and then people below 50 points are very likely depressed and in great need of support. So, based on that information, I took that and investigated adolescents, adults and parents. So parents who have a child with autism and adolescents and adults with autism. And what was, I guess, really exciting is that theory was replicated. So it's exactly the same for people on the autism spectrum, which is just, I think, fantastic. So going forward, how do we keep ourselves happy, or how can we support people so that they've got a happy life? Well, there's these three internal mechanisms. There's self-esteem. So am I a person of self-worth? There's optimism. I know that there's a challenge facing me right now, but I know tomorrow is going to be a better day. And then perceived control. Sometimes I don't necessarily have control over a situation, but I can sort of internally reorganise that, or I can try and create control. So these systems just kick in, especially if you're getting closer to 70 points on that scale. And there are sort of these filters that occur. What we do know is when someone drops below 70 points, that them you saying I'm a person of self-worth, or them being a person being optimistic starts to reduce. But there's also external factors that can keep us happy as well. Money does play a role, and from the research, household incomes that earn about $30,000 after tax have the people in those households have a subjective wellbeing above 70 points. We don't see much. There are some significant differences to household incomes of about $100,000, but they're not that great. There isn't that much difference. And for household incomes that earn over $100,000, we see no difference in the people's well-being, which tell us, and when we explore it, personal relationships have a far greater impact on a person's well-being and protecting a person's well-being. And so does achieving in life. Are you achieving the goals that you want to set out? So with knowing this information and thinking about sporting clubs and sporting organisations, if there's a person that wants to do sport, or if there's a young child that wants to do sport, and we can make it inclusive, and we can encourage those personal relationships, we can encourage those quality relationships and allow the person to feel happy and secure, the sporting organisation is doing a great job to protect that person's well-being. Same with achieving in life. Some people, not all people enjoy sport, and that's fine, but for the people that do as well, that can also provide that achieving those goals that they want to aspire to as well, and having that support. So I see great value in sporting organisations. In the last talk I was with that Sean as well, looking at the Little Nippers program, and it was just great to see how kids in the Little Nippers program and parents were coming together and being able to foster those quality relationships, and also foster goals and that achieving in life, and trying to make it to having little ceremonies and wanting to sort of win the race, or win the opportunities. Now, I know there's some parents in the room, so I want to show you a little bit of data here. The sample size is about 30 participants, so we're still collecting data on this. But I asked parents who had a child with autism, an adolescent with autism, I asked parents to rate what they think their child's well-being is. And so this is the data that's come up. And what we see in the column in subjective well-being is that parents are sort of saying, I think my child's well-being is just above 50 points. And so if we took that as valid and reliable, that would be indicating to us of going, okay, these kids, there's some great concern and some great intervention that is needed. However, when we ask the adolescents themselves, this is the information and the data that came. And as we can see, the adolescents are just reporting above about 72 points. So parents, and we know this from studies that have looked at intellectual disability and some other factors as well, parents are actually a really bad indicator of a child or an adolescent's well-being. And we're a really bad indicator of predicting other people's well-being as well. We'll always rate someone to be worse off than ourselves. So it's not a valid and reliable indicator. The only way that we can do that is by asking the person and getting the person's own perspective on how they're going. So to summarise, personal relationships and achieving in life are the strongest predictors to predict a person's well-being, whether they have autism, whether they don't, without autism, whether they have a disability. We need to foster quality relationships, we need to support quality relationships and support people to achieve their goals. So thank you very much.
That is an excellent slide to leave up for a second. I think as we think about not just competitive sport, but the way that learning to ride a bicycle maybe affects somebody's view on what they're achieving. If you've ever tried to ride a bicycle and you fall off and you fall off and you fall off, but eventually you figure it out and you can see what you've achieved. And of course, through those personal relationships that we can build as kids and as adults playing on playing fields or going bushwalking, but also on the sidelines when parents are talking to other parents, talking about how are they using their NDIS funding. At the Little Nippers program, there was a parent who met another parent, and through those discussions they had their Department of Education funding completely revised because the parent said, oh, don't say this, say that. And so that those personal relationships have a knock-on effect. So we've touched on the broad idea of subjective well-being, and now we're going to switch more into social skills and mental health with Dr. Steve Edwards, also from Federation. Welcome, Steve.
Thanks very much, Sean. I've been a clinical psychologist for a long time and an academic for a little while. One of the things I've learned about being an academic is you get used to doing a lot of talking. So it is actually helpful to make sure that you keep track. So I'm just going to time myself, if that's all right. All right. Thanks again, Sean. I'd also like to mention a couple of students that are researching with me. Neve Dowling, who's here, she's doing some research into mental health and social connection for young adults in tertiary education. And Josh Kane, who I don't think he's made it to the suburb, but he helped with some of the work in the social skills training area, where we actually reviewed some of the academic studies to see how those social skills training helped, and if so, which ones were going to be helpful. It's gone the wrong way.
To the right, the button to the it's definitely wrong. You can see all my emails.
Having been a psychologist for a long time, I can actually remember back to the late 70s. I can't quite go back to the 1940s, Sean, that you mentioned, but I do remember Bruno Bettelheim, his work. And for those of you, particularly those of you parents, he's famous for putting forward the theory that autism was the fault of mothers because they weren't emotional enough. So that's a bit of a bookend, I think, for at least my own personal experience as someone working as a professional in the field. And if I could just indulge you with a bit of that, a kind of a potted history of what I've seen happen over the years and the progress that we've made. Not all of that because of professionals, mostly because of people with autism and those around them that love and advocate for them. So early on, people with autism lived in institutions, and professionals thought that everyone with autism had an intellectual disability as well, or that autism was some kind of mental illness that could be cured or treated. They lived in large institutions, and of course professionals made decisions for them, often under the Mental Health Act. Okay, things moved on. In the 1980s, parents started to advocate, and governments listened a bit, and policy changed, and children in particular with autism were able to go to schools with the same schools that other people went to, and of course they expected to learn the same things and to do the same sorts of things when they left school. I can read it from here, maybe that's better than twisting my neck around. Okay, and of course people with autism also, as they grew up, started going to the same workplaces and tertiary education institutions as other people, and of course making their own decisions. And we now live in an age where people with autism have invented a label or a term or a diagnosis for those that don't have autism. So the neurotypicals are in this modern age as well. Still plenty of work to do, but let's pay tribute to those that have worked so hard along the way, parents, people with autism, some within governments, and of course some notable professionals that worked very, very hard, and researchers and academics along the way across the world. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about mental health, just sort of leaning on the literature a little bit, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about social skills, and particularly group social skills programs and how they might help. As I've only a couple of months ago been to a workshop with Dr. Liz Lawson from the US to learn about the PEERS young adult social skills training program. So we know from our existing research that people on the spectrum do experience more mental health problems, but it can be harder to work this out. We come across this phenomenon called diagnostic overshadowing, where it's easy to kind of, if you don't know a person well, to assume that their disability or their autism is the reason why they actually have the difficulties they have, and miss the signs and symptoms of mental health problems. Sometimes it's because our clinicians, GPs, psychologists and psychiatrists don't have enough experience with working with individuals. Sometimes it's because they don't know that individual well enough. They're taking a cross-sectional look using their assessment criteria, instead of learning about the person and getting enough information about how things have changed for them in the past little while that might indicate that they've got a mental health problem. We also, there's been questions about whether the measures or assessments that we use in the neurotypical population, and whether those actually would be useful and valid for people on the spectrum. We do do know though now from recent research that some of the most commonly used questionnaires are actually valid for people on the spectrum. It is a little bit harder though for people that also have an intellectual disability. We need to work a little bit harder on observing the signs of possible mental health problems rather than just asking questions about the symptoms that they might experience. Depression is probably the most common mental health problem that people on the spectrum experience, along with anxiety, but there are also other problems that come along as well. We know that for adolescents, moving into adulthood, so making that transition, that's particularly difficult and challenging. It is for any young adult, but it can be particularly challenging for those on the spectrum. Schools have a lot of structure, and where that structure is well suited to the individual and their needs, that really helps. But then moving into, say, tertiary education or a workplace where there's often less structure, so more independence is required, more self-determination, it gets more difficult because there's often a lot of skills that are specific to those settings that are required. And of course, for a lot of people on the spectrum leading into adulthood, they're ambivalent about how much adult support, parental support they still want. Sometimes for them it feels like surveillance, even though families are acutely aware of the importance of the support. We now see from some of our recent research that there are more and more young adults now attending tertiary institutions, universities, TAFE colleges, more than ever before. We do have more supports available now, and in tertiary education, disability support units, there are specialist employment support services around, other community supports, and of course the National Disability Insurance Scheme are very helpful. But like anyone, relationships are needed at work, in the study setting, recreation, sport, and in the general community. But it can be a bit harder for people on the spectrum. Sometimes they may lack the social skills for that particular situation. They may learn those for another situation, but it can sometimes be hard to actually shift those skills or adapt them to another specific situation. Sometimes their interests may not overlap with the people that they're studying with or that they're working with, so it's hard to actually get that connection. And of course, sometimes the trial and error learning that a lot of other people use may not actually be the best kind of way of learning. They often need a bit of help, a bit of specific help to learn the social skills that are right for that situation, and the opportunity to practice. Those can be situation specific, like work or study, but also life stage specific too. And just a kind of point reflecting on the difference between parental views and the views of young people on the spectrum. Liz Lawgerson, who presented the workshop that I went to in Sydney, asked parents and asked people that, young adults that went to the program, what was most important to them. And for parents, they were most concerned about their young adult having the skills that they needed to date with other people and date safely. Whereas the young people themselves, They just wanted to learn to make friends. So it's important for us to listen to the person and the people that are there in front of us, if we're professionals, to provide the support that's specific for them. Okay, so this kind of leads to I suppose some suggestions about social skills. We've for quite a long time had social skills programs, group social skills programs in schools, particularly for adolescents, but it's only recently that we've had programs now for young adults. And the peers program that Elise has developed and run seems to be showing some very good results. And some of the things that I gleaned from the workshop with her that I thought were worth sharing, I think, and useful for anyone that's wanting to learn social skills, but also those who are wanting to help someone on the spectrum actually gain them. It's great to demonstrate the skill from the start to the finish, so do the whole run, and video or live role play is a great way to do it. In fact, the videos that Ms. Lawson uses are actually available freely on on YouTube for those of you who may want to give them a go. Don't be afraid to show the wrong way to do it. In fact, Liz says, make sure you show people the wrong way first before you then show the right way. Negotiate practice in between sessions. So, we might call it homework, but these are the practice tasks that help to consolidate the skills. One of the things that she found in her research was particularly useful and made her program more effective than others was having a coach as part of the program. Not in the same room necessarily. They had parallel groups with the young adults in one room, learning, and then the social coaches, which were often parents, but not always, in another room. And they went through the material as well. And then the homework or the tasks in between were for the young adults to practice and the coaches to actually help them with that practice. And I suppose the other thing is making sure that the material you're using is relevant for the setting. So the peers program has been run with university students. There are other social skills programs. Okay, just one more minute. There are other programs that have been run for employment preparation, which I think is another one of those key areas where support's necessary. So specific for those sort of settings. Whilst you might think that probably things like making friends, as an example, would be something that's across settings. You think that then, as well as that, there would be specific things for university, like negotiating an extension on your assignment with a lecturer, or in the work setting, negotiating your work plan with your boss. So these are important things, and hopefully as the research grows, we'll get more opportunities to actually run programs in those separate settings so that they're specific for people's needs. Okay, after having done the training, I'm hoping that at some stage we'll be able to run a social skills program for young adults at our Fair Junior Community Psychology Services. And just a quick little plug for them. Our clinic in the centre of town at the old School of Mines building does a lot of work with children and adults with learning robust community clinic, and we have very bright and skilled trainee psychologists, clinical psychologists, that work under the supervision of our staff and supervisors. It's also a site for some of our research from time to time as well. All right, I think I'm on 15 and a half minutes.
And there's flyers just outside. If you want to pick one up.
Excellent, thanks.
Yeah. That's perfect.
Thank you very much, Steve. I think that was exactly the messages that I was hoping to get through from the research and building the evidence base, especially around the last slide that was up before. Is we can show the wrong way to do things, and this is something that we do in a social setting, and it might be something that we 1 or 2 weeks ago I was helping somebody with autism prepare for an interview, and we can run through the wrong things to say or the wrong things to do, or think about that other interview you might have struggled in, but then running through the right things to do as well. And whether that's teaching social skills in an interview, or it's teaching the right how to bowl and how you're going to throw the bowling ball down the lane, having that coach and mentor to show you how to do that is really helpful. And I think that we are in a time where we are talking a lot more about mental health and well-being. And I know that especially for parents and especially mums, you're always going to put your children first. But we have to look after our own mental health first. And it is really nice to have community clinics who are dedicated to making sure that everyone's mental health is performing really well. So thank you very much, Steve. That was great. Speaking of social skills, Elise and I met a few weeks ago and we talked about what today would look like, and she told me about the differences between the social skills or the socialization between soccer, round ball football, and Australian rules footy. And I didn't pick up on the differences between the small talk, so it's really interesting. And I think what I hope to achieve tonight was laying a solid foundation of evidence-based research, and then getting into the lived experience with Elise. So now I would like to invite up Elise Muller to share her experiences as a woman with Asperger's. Do you want this to put forward?
Sure. That's a big, I was going to say that photo is a big head. I can't compete with that. It's like a massive kind of, we've been sitting down for a while. Do we want to stand up? And I'll give you guys 10 seconds just to say a random sound. I don't know, that's something that I'd like to do. Actually, you know what, let's make it more structured, because also I like structured. So how about, who is who's feeling somewhat confident? Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so if you're just gonna say any sound that you want to, like an urge. So at the moment my stim in my head is going pineapple. So then I'll just say pineapple, it's not really a sound, it's a word, but and then the person beside you will then repeat your sound and then yours. It's not a memory game, so don't worry, I'm not gonna, everyone's gonna know. Yeah, it's just the person beside you, but it's just to get some sort of, I know you can do a movement as well. Actually, let's do a ball. So you're gonna say, I'm stimulated right now because I've been sitting down for a while. So you're gonna say a sound. So I might say pineapple and I might pass you the ball. You're gonna receive the ball and go pineapple instead of thank you, because social skills, And then you're gonna pass the ball, and you're also gonna change the size of the ball. So you might go pineapple, shh, frog, or something. I don't know. We're doing words, but go. Okay, so pineapple.
Pineapple. Bar. No. Bar. Bar. Change. Penguin. Rabbit.
Bird.
Football.
Football. Crickball.
Football. Jump.
Rugby ball. Ball.
Kieran, glasses.
I do scare because this is a rock. Rock.
Oh.
Roll. 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 Spaceship.
Back to Elise.
That's me. Thank you. I was listening. I think we abandoned you guys. I'm sorry. Do we abandon you?
Yes.
Inclusion. What a great example. So before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'm a proud Wiradjuri and Palawa person. We're going to need them like on different ends because I'm just going to...
Yeah, so spread them out as much as possible.
So I'm from Wiradjuri and Palawa, which is Albury, New South Wales, Albury-Wodonga area and Tasmania area. I'm also Maltese and Dutch. So acknowledge everyone here. Who am I? I am Elise Muller. I had developed my own social enterprise called Active Support because when I was younger, all I wanted was to be able to buy a friend so I could play sport with. And I thought, like, if I could create that, that would just be awesome. It would have changed my life. So that's what I did. I do a lot of different talks to sporting clubs, schools, about what inclusion looks like, the importance of, I guess, how to include, and different classroom tips and strategies. I'm doing something a bit different today. I'm going to be talking about sport, which is really cool because that's my passion, as well as autism. Basically, in summary, because I'm not going to really go into my autism in the classroom journey, but I used to be really ashamed of my autism, even in year 10, which, you know, is somewhat old, somewhat mature. I wasn't, but you're meant to be. I had a code word tree, so whenever my mum talked about autism, it had to be, instead of autism or Asperger's, had to be called tree because I was that ashamed of it that it would send me into, like, I just couldn't stand to hear the word because I blamed it for all the bullying that I encountered. So I had to really, I guess the people around me, not my mum, but the teachers and all, I had a really deficit-based approach and said you can't do this because of autism, so I hated having autism. I'm going to be speaking of my experience with autism, and I am going to later on be mentioning some of the clients that I work with. But again, that's my perception of their autism. I'm not going to be speaking about their autism because you can't really, you've met one person with autism, I thought we'd start at the very beginning, so when a mummy and a daddy love each other very much. Just random, I was looking through some photos and I thought I'd add them in. So that's me on the right, that's my sister, Moraine. The trampoline was obviously brand new because it didn't last very long, because if you can see in the corner, there's a bit of a chewing mark. I don't know how long it took, but I ended up eating all the foam. So again, that's me. Had no concept of fear. And I was obviously very active, getting myself up onto ladders and then crying because I couldn't get myself down. So Mum enrolled me into Gymbaroo, which is basically kid gymnastics. So I was a very active child. Things started, I guess, for my mum, she started realising things are just a little bit odd. I had a really high level of anxiety. So Mum would take me to places that I loved doing in the backyard. And that's me crying. Again, I'm the person on the corner, on the end, not very happy. I just had so much anxiety, always crying. Even just to get me to places, I'd be like screaming in the car because of the seatbelt, lots of sensory issues, but Mum didn't really have a word for it. She didn't know it was autism. She did try to take me to the Children's Hospital for an assessment, but the first question they asked was, does Elise want friends? To which my mum answered yes, and they closed the book. So that was about 2002, so it's not too long ago. But the perception of autism has, the understanding hasn't really, it's come a long way. And then I guess being a female, masking behaviours, the older you get, the more you feel different to your peers and the more you feel behind, but then the more you learn to cover it up and to, in prep, I sat and watched the kids. I listened to the noises and it was like on the playground. I remember seeing kids running ball and then chasing it. And I thought that there was something in the ball that made people move. I thought we were all kind of like robots or like in The Sims, because I couldn't understand how I would have certain impulses to yell out things, and I didn't know where they came from. And I then saw people like running towards a ball, and I just thought like we were all kind of robots. I didn't understand what was going on in the world. I felt really separate to the world. I had this prep teacher, Miss Fern, and in grade 1, all the kids, all the students ran towards Miss Fern and saying, Miss Fern, hi. And I was like, oh, I wasn't, she mustn't like me. Why are we doing that? Now I could have just run up to Miss Fern and said hi, because that's what they were all doing, because she taught all of us. But because she didn't individually say, hi Elise, would you like to come? I felt excluded. And it was that feeling of never really knowing what to do, and so then not doing anything or acting impulsively and then getting in trouble for it, that I always felt quite separate to the world. The only time I did feel connected to the world was if I was climbing a tree with nature, or when I was exposed to actually playing sport. And I was in PE class and we were told to grab a ball, so I was given that invitation and we had to bounce it. And I remember the kind of surreal feeling of bouncing this basketball and you can kind of hear the high-pitched noise. And that was the first time that I ever felt connected to the world, because what I was touching had a sound, and it was what everyone else in my class was doing. I became quite good at sport because I practiced a lot. I was constantly breaking the light on my dad's garage. And yeah, so he wasn't very happy, but I became, I guess, quite good at sport. If we look at inclusion, my experience of exclusion in grade 4, I was the last to get picked. I wasn't really past the ball. I remember sitting there feeling like, oh, okay, this is soccer, I've done this before, I'm going to be really good at it. And there was me and this other kid, and this other kid had a broken arm. Not that that really impacts them to play soccer, but I felt like I was competent. And then they chose the other kid, and it was then equal teams. And then that team that was their turn to pick then said, oh, you can have it. And I remember just feeling like, wow, I'm really, truly not wanted. When I did play, I wasn't past the ball, and I would be like circled by the boys and pelted basketballs. I just had a really horrible bullying experience. And what I then learnt was that it was a lot safer to exclude myself. Everyone on the autism spectrum, every human wants to be included. But when it becomes kind of too unsafe, it doesn't matter if they didn't have as much of a bad experience as I did. It's human nature to go, even just simply feeling uncomfortable, even if I hadn't have said, if someone hadn't have volunteered for that really works in well at the moment that we did that, is you hadn't put your hand up to say I was going to do the sound ball, and I picked the person who was feeling the most anxious and said, you're going to go first. It would be safer to say, oh, sorry, I've got, to make excuses, sorry, I've got a sore voice. And like going to school, getting excluded a lot, I would start to get like physical symptoms of feeling so anxious that I'd vomit or I'd have upset stomach. But even if I didn't, it's a human thing to say, oh, I've got a sore stomach, I can't participate. So having like the counter, trying to oppose that by saying, oh, you'll be right, and not actually fixing the underlying problem of they don't feel included, they don't feel safe, isn't going to get them where they want to go. Isn't going to get them either where you want them to go. So this was whenever I played sport. They say people with autism don't have an imagination. I truly felt like I was an elite athlete. We would just be at 5 Montrose Court back in Sydenham. Don't worry, I don't live there anymore, so you can Google Earth that. It's actually, it's turned into the owner who took over that house didn't really look after it, so don't judge me for that. never really watch a game without running to, even like now, I can't actually watch football games without going, okay, I'm going to go and play footy right here, right now. But when I was in St. Dominic, shouldn't say that. If I kind of say a lot of schools, you're going to forget that. Or just think of St. Mary's, anyway. When I was in a school, they basically said, no, the footy team is for boys, so I couldn't play. Not for that reason, for other reasons. I was getting bullied, but I changed schools to St. Catherine's. I will say that school because it's a nice school. I didn't have friends, but I was included. I smashed my teeth quite early on in the year, and the school allowed me, because they said, the doctor said she can't be outside because if she gets knocked to the face, it's really bad because I just had an operation. So then the school allowed me to wear a baseball mask, and it was like an adult baseball mask, and I was not an adult, so it was like quite big. Bad sensory experience, but the hyper focus of being able to be playing down ball and that sort of stuff made it possible. So that was one way they included. They also let me trials, so we were doing athletics carnivals, they let me partake and do the trials with the boys because they weren't going to do a separate one for me. So it was just a school kind of trial session, so they let me run with the boys and then did my time and then let me go into the school athletics carnival in that section. What ended up happening was when I did compete, afterwards I was so anxious. They rang my mum to take me home. It was because it was quite overwhelming. Kind of later on, I had a similar experience where then they said, when my mum came, do I want to be with the teachers, kind of having a role, which was really helpful because I was able to still feel included, but I wasn't running. Right, yeah, so I had the ability, I was just quite anxious. And finally, another example of how they included me, this school actually changed the boys' football team, the label, to the school football team, and I was the only girl, and we won the Lightning Premiership, and the grand final was versing St. Dominic's, and so I tackled them, and it was a great kind of healing experience. So, what they did was they gave me an invitation. So what inclusion looks like is an invitation to participate, the acceptance of my capacity without judgment, the freedom to go against the norm to enable participation, and the flexibility to implement strategies to help me reach my potential. What inclusion doesn't really look like is so in high school I was enrolled in a heap of extracurricular activities. I loved them. Some teachers were quite afraid of my diagnosis, so they said, you can't partake, or it's too risky to take you out because this sport you compete in other schools, you have to go onto the bus. Things that kind of shouldn't have impacted, but at the same time, other teachers who allowed me to do things like hockey, because they weren't stressed and because I had the relationship with them where I felt that I was safe with them and they had my best interests at heart and that we were a team, there was actually no issues. And then the times when I felt that the teacher was anxious, I was anxious, and that's when it didn't really work. The teachers that did get it wrong was because they were influenced by the special needs coordinator. So the person that's meant to know my strengths and be able to articulate how to best, cater for my needs to reach success. It had a deficit-based approach, which is the opposite. So this is what Elise can't do. This is what you need to look out for. And that kind of followed me every single year, because the same rap of look out for this student, then that teacher would get scared because they're like, oh, it hasn't worked in the past. And it took the teachers to just go, okay, we'll get to know, like what you said, we'll get to know the student, we'll get to know what they're good at, we'll get to know what they enjoy, that sort of stuff. That's when it worked. I guess when I had reached my success of what success looks like, so I had trained, got up every morning and trained for the swimming carnival and kept going all the way, made it to the state team. which you get a badge for, and you get to go into the team photos. Because I didn't compete when it actually happened, I wasn't allowed in the school photos. So I kind of thought that I was part of the team, so I'd done like about a month worth of morning training sessions for the school. And then I got there and the teacher aide said, "No, Elise, you didn't partake," and I wasn't allowed. So success, and I'll talk about it a bit later, but success for a student, especially with special needs, is very different to a success for a student without special needs. It's not ticking all those boxes. It's that, okay, I might have ticked this box this time, and then next time we go, hey, you ticked that box, let's see if we can get a bit more, and those are building blocks. But if it's not ticked, it's kind of disregarded all the effort, all the time, kind of overcoming anxiety. If that's not acknowledged or appreciated, then my self-worth of, I put in all this effort, put in all this time, and that wasn't good enough, I'm going away thinking what I try is never going to be enough, and the outcome is going to be rejection. And so it's a lot safer to say that I can't than to challenge that and be left exhausted, left feeling rejected. Dun, dun, dun. I think we'll implement a sound every chapter. I think there's only 2 chapters, if we're going to call them chapters. I'm an author, I'm really not. I don't know. Yeah, so we're going to talk about sensory stimulation and impulsivity. Running in PE class, I was that student who would, if you needed to line up, fruit salad, how you have to go all those fun games. I could never wait for them to say ready, set, go. They'd be ready, and I'd be off. The opposite has kind of happened with footy, where they say ready, set, go, and I've trained myself to wait till the actual command, and I've got a bit of a processing delay. So when I hear go, I go, and so it's kind of waiting for that actual cue. Yeah, I love sport. I am a bit hyperactive. I've always been hyperactive, and I've loved sport to burn my energy. Did I start this speech saying that I have autism? Oh no, but you said it.
Yeah.
I was going to say, does that give me a bit of leeway when I start up talking? It's it's okay, she's got autism. Impulsivity. So I remember there was a thing of Ian Thorpe, and I guess that picture is a bit pixelated, I didn't know. But when he first started, seeing that, the reaction that I had was, wow. Now I just kind of went, he has autism, knowing nothing about him, and not knowing at that time that I had autism, but just going, wow, he's exactly like me, and that means I'm going to be an Olympic swimmer. And just that kind of recognition of, not the recognition, but that possibility of that's what it takes, and that's what I'm good at, and that's what I'm going to be. And he's got all these medals. It made something really, really possible, which kind of then planted the seed of thought for me of, if I become really good at sport, other people with autism are going to be able to know that it's possible. So if we look at what exactly autism feels like, well, autism in medical terms is that you kind of see it in 2 main things. The one is it's a communication deficit, and I don't struggle with talking, I struggle with talking so you understand me. Love talking. The other kind of thing is it's a sensory processing disorder. So in the community, in unmedical terms, what they normally say is we're from another planet, or that we see the world differently. Now that's correct. We do see the world differently for 2 things. Number 1, what other people don't actually notice, I do. So I'll register and I need to then make sense of it, which takes processing time. And the other reason why we see the world differently is because of actual sensory stuff. So heightened kind of, when I'm driving, my ex would be completely fine with the lights of the cars, but I'd wear these really uncool, but I made them cool, sunnies, so that the lights of the cars didn't hurt my eyes. So when we look at sensory, so people say there's 5 main senses, and if it's a sensory disorder, then that kind of impacts all of them. Well, false. There's actually more than 5 senses. There's something like 23, some people say 36 senses. Things like your sense of balance, your sense of time, your sense of hunger, your sense like your intuition, your bodily needs, your pain. Good one on pain. It's a bit of, I want to know in terms of like trying to ask the individual, how do you rate it? When I had my teeth knocked out, I wasn't crying, and I remember being in so much pain, and then they asked me, what's your rate of pain? And I got I got basically sent home. I had like a really bad teeth accident, like they were dangling, and I wasn't crying, and they were like, what's your rate of pain? And I was like 2, and they were like, it's not that bad. And I was thinking, do I need to wet myself for them to know? So the sense of pain and the sense of like being able to measure things, I personally struggle with. Fatigue, danger, sense of humour, sense of direction, all these kind of things. Okay, so proprioception or something. So like, you know, if you go like this, and then you try to put your fingers together, that's proprioception. Can you guys do that? For no reason, just to... Yes, so you guys are not autistic. And that is how you diagnose something. No. But that's like one cool thing. So like my client's parents are like, oh, we don't think we're autistic. And I was like, do this. And I'm like, you're not autistic. And then the kid does it. And then they're just like, so I actually tried. I'm going to master that one day. And that will be when I've peaked. So in terms of sensory, so we'll go through the senses. So touch, things that are really light for me, that hurts. But if you touch me firmly, that's okay. In saying that, I don't like people touching me. Taste. I am heightened with smell, which links into taste. So if mum, I'm like, Mum, you've changed something when you cook or something like that. Like I can figure it out. Also with smell, like when the teacher came over and like they've got, let's make it about sport. When a coach came over and if they have like coffee breath, it's like instant no, like I don't like it. Hearing loud noises, in the sports case, whistles, like the whistle blowing or the coach going, all right, everyone come in. I would like, my instinct is actually to go away when I hear that because it's so intense. What is it like? So I hear everything. When I was younger, I didn't register tone. So I couldn't really remember music because I'd hear the words and I'd hear but I couldn't register it. So then I got into a bit of, Mum would say like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I'd have to copy it. And from there, I started to actually register tone. But that was good, but that made the world really, really chaotic because all of a sudden I was hearing my science teacher going, okay, everyone, and I was going, woohoo, and it was just like massive. I felt really, really like I was going crazy. So that's the tone part. In terms of volume, I hear everything at the same volume. So if someone was tapping and if someone was kind of going, la, 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 I hear it at the volume of the maximum sound that I can hear, but everything at that level. And the way that I kind of don't go insane is when I'm walking and I do this, so say for example, we'll have outreach support, like a psychologist, whatever, walking with me. While they're talking, I have to go truck, not out loud because people will start thinking I'm crazy, which would be accurate, but like we don't want them to actually put me in anything like more severe of a psychological thing. And then I'd be like going crow, truck, light, all those sort of things so I can register it. Now, what happens if I'm in an environment where I actually am meant to talk to them? I'm not some super genius, you can think that, but I'm not some super genius who can like actually register that and talk to them. So what happens is I can't register it all, so I start getting really stimulated. So I'll start going like, I don't know, bit of an example is my friend Danny. While I actually thought that I was talking to her, I wasn't. It was in a group. I started getting really excited and I cable tied her brakes to her thing and I unhooked her bike and all that. And then she was like, my friends are really cool. And she's like, Elise, dude, what's going on? And I was like, oh, don't worry, I'll fix it. And then she's like, what do you want to say? And I was like, okay, I'm sorry about that. I was really excited. I'm going to fix that. I really like how we had, you include me in training, and I also wouldn't like you to go, but I know you have to go, so I'm going to uncable tie your things. That wasn't that long ago. And I have good friends. One good thing, so my friend Megan, she came in and she was really nervous about, if she was going to be included with my friends, and all I had to say is, they accept me, so they're going to accept you. I'm like the filter of good people. If they like me, they're going to like anyone, and if they're not really that nice or inclusive, then they're not going to include me. So I'm like a filter. So don't use me like that, but it's late. When I can't block something out, I will I'll get stimulated. And the kind of, when I was younger, like the report said that I used to rock. Other things that you do is kind of stimming. Does everyone know what stimming is?
Yeah.
Does anyone not know what stimming is? I like you guys. So stimming, I have a purpose. Stimming is short for self-stimulation. So we are people. People will basically do repetitive movements for self-stimulation. There's only two reasons why, I'll speak for me, because it's not on Google, but there's only two reasons why I would do that, and that's, number one, is to reduce anxiety, or that's number two, or we could go A or B, or anyway. Number two is to get focused. So everyone stims. You guys are really neurotypical, or you're just really polite. Okay, that's a stim. Thank you. Jiggling your neck, your knee is a stim. Tapping on something, that's a stim. But we're all either polite or we understand other people might find that annoying, so we don't do that. So what I used to do in year 10 was I used to roll a soccer ball under the desk. But I guess traditional ones is flapping, rocking, all that sort of stuff. And what I'm trying to do is be louder and also in control of what I can't control, which is my environment. The thing is, though, why I love sport so much and why sport really saved me is because when I play sport, that is my stim. And there's a stereotype of saying that people with autism don't like sport. Wrong, unless I don't have autism, and then why would I be here? But I do have autism. So I love sport, and the reason why I love sport is because it is a stim. I can play table tennis for hours, while the other person will get fatigued. I'm actually recharging. Bouncing the ball, dun, 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 as long as I'm in control, or as long as it's kind of in sync, I'm recharging. If other people might have stims in terms of video games, so seeing that kind of lights, that stimulation. For me, it's definitely sport. The thing is, though, we naturally struggle at having gross motor skills, coordination. So if I wasn't, I think stubborn isn't the right word. If I wasn't so stubborn as a young person, or if I wasn't so happy doing it, then I wouldn't have practiced so much. So I remember my mum being so supportive for soccer. She's like, goalies, goalies, and I'm running, and then I kick it, and I'm ready to see the ball, and I've missed it completely. But it's because I practiced so much. So why do I like sport? It's because it makes sense. When I play sport, everyone in the world, my environment at that time, is focusing on one thing, and that's the ball. And when I play sport, I'm included because we're all part of one team. And we're touching on, I was telling you about the difference, that was language, it's a bit different, but the difference between soccer and footy is soccer, you can get, if you hog the ball, you're not going to get in trouble. The worst is the ball's going to get taken off you. But in football, when I first started, I hated football because people touched me. But the thing is with football, if you don't lay a tackle on for your teammate, when you go and get the ball, they won't lay a tackle on for you. And so why I love elite sport is because we need to all lay a tackle. So I was feeling included and basically not paying people to be my friend, but just by being there, that was the criteria. What happens though is when I start, it's the end of the day, and I've controlled so much urges, so much kind of stimulation, is that I start getting impulsive, and then that's basically, we look at like a battery. So we start, it's like, this is me functioning normally. Now, I'm not hinting on high functioning, low functioning autism, because I think that really sucks. It's not respectful for those who have high functioning autism, because that just means that you guys experience my autism less, not that I have autism less, because it's a way of processing. And it also is just disrespectful for those that have low functioning autism, because who would like to hear or to be judged to say that they don't function, or they function at a low capacity? Instead, you can say higher support requirements, lower support requirements. And the reason why I was talking about that battery is because during this kind of area, people say Elise doesn't have autism because they can't see it. But then my battery starts to get low, I start to get really impulsive, and that sort of stuff. And then it gets even lower, and that kind of, I really want to get this like medically approved. When I get kind of, I guess, amber to red, I start going into protective mode, which is to shut down, and that also protects you. But if you keep pushing and you keep like saying no, participate, when I can't participate at that point, then I go into meltdown mode. But I hardly ever go into meltdown, and my mum will beg to differ about that. But I need to present myself well, so I hardly ever go into meltdown. Basically, the difference, so this is like a bit of an example. So you could be like running, I'm in the world, like I hear people running, and then I can hear a crow, and then I can hear people laughing, hear people talking, and then the teacher's saying, Elise, are you listening to me? And then from there, there's all these different experiences, instructions, and I need to work out exactly what I was going to do. And then everyone's kind of like, that was meant to be an experience, but I took you ahead of that without visuals. So soccer training, I was always way too stimulated for my group. So like when it was for my team, so when it was that people were doing soccer training and drills, I and my soccer team hated it. Or actually, I think there was only 2 people that hated it, but they voiced it while other people didn't voice that it's okay. And so then I understood it as everyone hates it. That's probably a good tip, is like the whole thing of the bystander, you're agreeing. Inclusion is actually cutting out and making sure your environment is safe, and that means that the put downs are not okay. I always say pull-ups, not put downs. So when I was in soccer and really, really stimulated, I'd be yelling out like chicken nugget, chicken nugget, chicken nugget, and like really, really excited, and they wouldn't like it. But then the opposite kind of happened in the game, where I'd be really, really nervous. I'd turn from like, like a whoa, and it's like, no, it's just training, to like a really, really nervous. And then once the game actually started, I was on. Fast forward after that, from going really bad to soccer, horrible gross motor skills and bad like coordination, I then made Women's National Premier League. Cool. And then, so the stimulation frequency, so while other people kind of go to their days, they go, oh yeah, there's some good stuff, and it's kind of, then they go down. For me, it's like, okay, start, we're gonna be on, okay, that's not, so like start, we're gonna be on, we're gonna be ready, and then kind of something happens, I might get nervous, and then all of a sudden I get distracted or get really impulsive, like something really inspires me. I go really high, and then I get in trouble because I'm too high. Not on, that's when autism feels good. No one ever talks about when autism feels good. But other people, they have to have like alcohol or illicit substances. Sometimes it feels really, really good. Like when I'm excited, I'll be like running down and going, yes, yes, yes. And my brothers are just like on the iPad going, Sometimes autism feels good and it's something to celebrate. But it's not good to get into trouble. So then I go really, really down, and then it kind of, that's like my life, the highs and the lows and the highs and the lows. That's really not my life. That's like my 1 hour. So sport has always been my connection to the world when I didn't feel connected. So if we look at how I made sport connect for me, basically Pythagoras' theorem, just as an example for maths, I didn't like it, I didn't see the point in it, and because I didn't like it, it was really hard for me to focus. And then when it's hard to focus, like you kind of look at like B, and C, and it was a bit too much. So from there, you do what I do, and you make it make sense, basically. So that we have a soccer pitch, we have a goalkeeper, because that makes sense. Instead of saying point, well, yeah. And then you kind of need to make everything about me for it to become important in my world. So you have to include me. And then the third thing you do is you say, hey, this is Messi. Bit of a thing. Messi has autism. Yes, people with autism play sport. And then all of a sudden, you've got a right angle triangle. And from there, when you make the topic about my interest, I can try harder for longer. I see purpose in it, and I understand it. Pythagoras' theorem became my most confident, and I still remember it to this day, how to do it. It still does not come in handy, but I remember it because it was linked into my interest. So after soccer, I then changed to football, and that is me. I have good muscles. And we played in the state. I remember actually playing football though. It was so scary. There was people running at me. There was the whistles. I didn't understand the rules. It was like the worst sensory experience ever. And then at the same time, I was like, well, I'm going to perfect this. There was people that made it to nationals, and I wasn't even sure that I really shouldn't have been on that team at the time. But Charlotte, this awesome lady, was like, well, if you're gonna play footy, you might as well join a local club. So I did that. After I made the state team, that's because the training was structured and I could actually physically kick a ball and I could do all those things, but then putting it into a game where it was all chaotic, my performance went down, my anxiety went up. So if you want to have someone perform, maybe not on an elite level, but just at a kind of any level, manage the anxiety first. Anxiety goes down, performance will go up, vice versa. I tore my lateral meniscus, and that's another example of pain. I tore my lateral meniscus. I had to have a brace, like a full leg brace, and that wasn't good, and I was told I had to have an operation. Similar to then, it was about maybe 2 or 3 months after that. Now my leg had been in a brace for ages, so it was like really, really stiff. And I then got a letter. I got told that I was dropped from the state Vic Metro team that I had tried out for, which was, it made sense. But then I got a letter saying that I had made the national team, which was something that I tried. Oh, by the way, there was 2 years between the first time I played state and the second, so I did improve. And I was like, okay, I want to go to nationals. They don't know that I've got a torn lateral meniscus and a 16mm cyst in my right knee, but I'm going to go to nationals. So what I ended up doing was Mum dropped me off to the swimming pool, and I'd crutch her in. I just wanted to do that, so anyway. And then I'd go into the pool and I'd start getting movement. I realised I actually have no strength to move my knee. So then I went to the gym, not on the same day because I would have been wet, and I hooked up my leg to the bicycle, the gym bicycle, whatever it's called, and I used my left knee to start getting stiff movement. Now, in that, I also went to different surgeons who said, no, Elise definitely needs surgery, and I wonder why. It's because we were going to surgeons. So then Mum took me to a physician, I think it was, because obviously they were going to give us a different answer to Elise needs surgery. So once they gave me a program, that's when I started to do the swimming and the bicycle. From there, my first week allowed to do straight line running was the first week of nationals. I played 4 out of 5 games for the nationals. Now, I did that not because I'm super cool, which you can think that you're allowed, but because I have autism, because I had that hyperfocus. So I ended up then going internationally with them to New Zealand. But after that, I had a bad knee still. I still haven't had the operation, because what that means is I can't play sport because I've got the tear. Basically, sometimes tears are like that and they need to cut out a C, and that means you can still do it, but I've got a split, so that means I need to go snip and take the meniscus out, which will mean bone on bone, which will mean arthritis, which will basically mean I can't play sport. So that's why I'm not doing that. Now, if I didn't have autism, I would be not playing sport, basically, with arthritis, or probably not because I wouldn't play sport, but I do have autism. I've got that hyperfocus. I'm able to put the pain at the back, because I don't actually register as much as other people. and so now I've got nationals under my belt. I went back to community club, which was actually really, really like hard. There wasn't the structure. I would come in and I'd be the first to arrive, but then I'd always be the last, and the coach would be like, "Come on, Elise, we're still waiting for you." And that was because there was so much I needed to like think of. I need to bring my mouth guard, my boots, all these different things. And at that stage, I hadn't implemented like a strategy of writing lists. And also, I struggled with the pre-noise game, but my community club was awesome, and because they ended up allowing me to either wear headphones or to go into the trainer's room. From there, I made the Western Bulldogs team, as you do, and I basically went in there because I had experienced a lot of bullying in previous schools. Because I changed schools 7 times, I kind of went in there with the mindset of I don't belong, because I just had really, really low self-esteem, and I still do, which I try to cover up by going, I'm cool, and then if you guys don't laugh, then I go, well, I'm not cool, so just keep laughing. Basically, things that so that was my first game. As you can see, I was out of my league. Like, that's me, and then that's the girl, like, doing like a specky on me. I'm jumping, and she's so tall. Things that I struggle with, like changing bibs. So say for example, if we don't have a bib, so you're a defender, and then they say, okay, change teams, so you put on the bib. I can never do that. I really struggle with changing. So what I try to do is I try to look kind of, okay, bib, but I still struggle with that. Other things I struggle with is, but my team, my coach really, really helped me at Bulldogs, is that when she gave the whole kind of spiel to the team of this is what we're going to do, this is what you need to look out for, all those things that became really overwhelming, she'd just go up to me and say, Elise, I just want you to focus on this one thing. And from there, I was able to register that, repeat it back to her, so make sure I'm clear, and then go, for this game, I'm going to focus on one thing. And because I have autism, I can hyper-focus on that, and that really helped. My third game, I got best on ground of the Bulldogs. That was in Ballarat. So that's because that was the first game that she started implementing the one thing. I can do one thing, good. And the reason why I started realising why they wanted me is because I do struggle with so many things, but I play on instinct. So if I was to process anything other than that one thing, I can't really do that well. But they need a player that can play on instinct, and that can kind of do the see ball, get ball, and I can do that. One thing I can't do is tell you if we won the game or not. I always kind of think back to, did we sing the song? Or I really struggle with it. And one thing that I'm kind of working on at the moment, I'll sit here, one thing I'm kind of working on at the moment is that AFL talk, because I realize you don't have to do it. It's like, yeah, no, we played a really good game. The girls were amazing. We've been working really, really hard. We just had to stick at what we wanted, and we got the outcome. Thank you, no further questions. That's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to get away with it because I will never be able to tell you what happened in the game, and that's really frustrating for people to say, hey, did you enjoy the game? Wait, I'm not sure. Did they win? I'm not sure. Did you play good? I'm not sure. And then I think back to, did the coaches say I played good? Look, the coaches said I played good. So that's kind of my experience with footy. And I'm a bit concerned about that, because you know when they say, I've been doing like this gratitude journal, nothing about this talk, but you know when they say, if you have never really been present in the moment, and you kind of have lived 70 years, but then you don't actually know, like, have you actually lived those 70 years? I'm concerned, so that's something I really need to fix. So, again, I'm significantly shorter. Look at me. That's probably my life size, actually. And then she's, like, massive. But I now play for Essendon, and I have coping strategies that this year it's going to be better. Not that last year was bad, but I struggled. Essendon allowed me to stand outside of the huddle. I really struggle with kind of being in the team, in the huddle. It's kind of big for me, and I never listen. Where they've said, you don't need to stand in the huddle, you can stand as far away as you want. And I've noticed the last 2 training sessions, I've been able to stand closer because the expectation and that kind of demand of me to be closer than what I'm too anxious for has gone. So I'm able to go, I'm listening, oh, that person's doing that thing that's kind of distracting me. And the other thing is because we train Tuesday, Thursdays, last night I asked our coach Schultze, can we move 10 steps that way, because we had our different line meetings and I couldn't hear. And they just said, yeah, let's hop up, let's move. It took 2 seconds, and from there I was able to listen and it helped. And then I was not a waste to the team because I was able to do my role. I create my own routine and preparation lists. I have a football in my hand. That's one thing the Bulldogs allowed me to do, which is kind of against the rules, but I'm allowed to have a ball in my hand on the bench. Before every quarter, this year I'm going to check what way we're going, so I don't kick the wrong way. No, but this is good. Like, I've got my strategies. And the team are going to do the same playlist every session before the game starts. So then the sensory, in terms of what I can hear, is the same. It's one thing less that I have to process. So I'm going to hope to be in the team, in the group. Despite all this, when I still kind of miss always the instructions when they give it to us, and I don't really want to stick with that, just learning that one thing, because I feel like I'm in an elite environment where everyone's learning so much and I'm being left behind. But when they do it and they try to, as well as auditory, they try to do the visual cues, which is like on a whiteboard. But when they're doing that, I'm hearing the squeaking, and I do register that by saying, okay, squeaking and that sort of stuff. But then if he sniffles, or if he touches, I'll have to go sniffle, touch, and I'm still missing a lot. So that's my other thing that I'm going to try to do. I'm going to see if I can, just thought about that actually, I'm going to see if I can get them to explain it to me on a video, so then I'm in a room not with sensory stuff and I can listen, because I find phone calls, I used to find them so intimidating, but I can actually talk and open up a lot better than if I'm talking to them face to face, because there's so much less that I have to register. And at this time, we're actually at the same playing field. When I struggle with intonation, when I struggle with facial expressions and all that sort of stuff, they're equal, because I'm not giving them that, so they can't read me more than I can read them, and I can actually just listen to the words. I've only answered phone calls for the last 12 months. That was a big achievement. What I do well, I hope you guys aren't thinking, yeah, so Essendon really are making sure, so if you look at what inclusion looks like, it is the feeling that I belong, that I'm valued, that I'm accepted just by being myself, and that what I am in that moment is enough. I don't want you guys to think Elise isn't actually good at sport, and there's so much that is that she can't do, and so why is she playing for Essendon? So it is my instinct, and they've said it's my attitude and hard work. I'm passionate, I hyper-focus, and my energy. Oh, I'd love to show you this video of me. No, look, I don't have it. It's okay. As an adult, I'm learning that there's actually, the discrepancies. When I was younger, I was so much different to my peers, and then you can kind of match that. But when it's an inclusive environment, which I'm finding most adults are, they just want you to do the job. And if you change it to your outlook on what they can't do to how can we make what they can do possible, it's easier for them. Alright, how am I going? I think I'm,
Perfect.
finished?
No,
No?
you're good.
We can keep going?
Perfect.
I'd love to do a PD. I'd love to do a 3-hour this is what you can do. Why might someone not participate in sport? How about we have no processing delay and processing time, and people just shout it out? Why might someone not participate in sport? Think of yourself. Think of a student you worked with. Give me the answers.
Fear.
Fear.
Parents.
Anxiety.
I'd say parents.
Parents. Yeah, the pressure. I didn't have that. Pardon? Confusion.
Negative past
Not being fun.
Not being fun.
Negative past experiences.
Yeah, that's cool. So what I've come up with in X amount of time was past trauma, maybe they've been hit by the ball. Oh, sorry, the first thing is they don't like sport, and that's the language that you'll normally get, is I don't want to do it, why? Because I don't like it. And then if we look deeper into why don't they like sport, it's a past trauma sensory experience. Sport isn't like video games. It's not like you're in your room where there's nothing else but what you're controlling. They don't see the point. There's lack of structure, feeling lost, lack of self-confidence, fear of failure, which was like parents. Sensory, they don't see the purpose. So why do we want them to partake in sport? Well, communication practice, but they might already be talking to people through gaming. It's fun, but it simply might not be for them. It's the curriculum, you have to. Well, if they push enough and then you've got an experience of kind of going, okay, you don't have to, they realise that what you say you have to, you don't actually have to. Relatability, it'll help you connect to your peers. It's like, okay, so I'm going to connect to my peers and I'm going to realise that I don't like what they like, and I'm actually going to realise again that I'm quite different still. Or the whole thing is like, I actually looked up, it was like the whole chemical release of serotonin. If you, like, you know, you have the experience, you might actually find after you exercise a bit that the chemical release of serotonin might make you quite happy. Psychologist, am I right?
That's each one of them,
Yeah. But if you are excluded, if you play the sport and you're exercising, and it doesn't matter how much you run, you're not actually reaching the ball, or you have, you know, you're getting injured, or you just feel excluded. Psychologist, are you going to have serotonin released?
Maybe not.
Maybe not. Or maybe it's a little bit and then it's counteracted because you've got all these feelings of low self-esteem, all that sort of stuff. So, what we need to do, ladies and gentlemen, is we need to create an inclusive, I've just changed my tone, I love that. We need to make the environment inclusive. So, rule number one, it's not actually number one, but it's an important thing, is deal with the bullies first. If there is a put down, cut it out. Make sure that your environment is safe so that you can be true to your word by saying, if you do this, you will be safe. Then the second thing is we actually look at the individual. So having a diagnosis, having a student with a disability is not a reason for exclusion or for you to go like in a negative kind of perception. It is a reason to cross-check that you are being inclusive. Because like you said, Sean, it is a right. That's a Black Lives Matter sign. What's another sign? It is a right. That's Usain Bolt signs. It's a right. We'll go with that one. So manage anxiety first. So I think I'm really going over time. How do we?
How much time would you like?
Oh, skip.
We're flexible.
Okay, I'll be quick. Basically, make sure you build rapport first. Have that relationship with the person. Preparation, so you can make sure that you create familiarity where there isn't. Have a discussion, so talk about the pros, the cons, the dangers, the outcomes, all that sort of stuff. Make sure you're taking care of the environment, so it's controlled in terms of sensory processing. I'm talking faster. Auditory processing, so make sure you have clear instructions and make it strengths-based, so make sure it links in with their strength. Like the Pythagoras' theorem example, there was less processing time when I could understand it and imagine it. Flexibility for stepping stones, so desensitization, allowing me to wheel a trolley or giving me a role to wheel a trolley. I'm actually hearing noises on the way, and if it's kind of not as much of a woof, getting into the basketball thing and all these different sounds, it's less kind of going to do a panic. Because when you think of impulsivity and hyperactivity, it's actually because it's not traumatic, but it's having an impact on my body. So even if I'm not shutting down and I'm going crazy, that's a sign of, okay, something's not okay. Creating order in disorder, allowing for recharge time. So where am I now? Basically, I worked with Torrens University to create the first ever autism course run by people with, designed with the people teaching it as people with autism. So that was really, really cool. I created active support, which is personal training, mentoring, and public I became a teacher aide because I wanted to like work out why they were getting it so wrong. Autism wasn't mentioned once in my course. So like as a teacher aide, so I'm a qualified teacher aide, and if I knew nothing about autism, I would still know nothing about autism. I play footy, but my greatest achievements is what basically three things: finishing year 12 because that was really hard, getting my driver's license / getting a job because that made me independent, and having friends because that's all I've ever wanted in my whole life. I have now come on board as the first ever disability ambassador for AFL that plays footy, and my hope is that it's going to do two things. Number one, it's going to do that Ian Thorpe moment where the kid's going to go, okay, if she can do it, I can do it. It's going to create that belief which is necessary for accessibility of sport. And the second thing it's going to do, hopefully, is there's three things. The second thing is that kid that doesn't know anything about autism. Okay, so I want other people, athletes, to come out because it's impossible that people don't have autism if they're being elite athletes. Because you look at these things where you can label it as negative, such as OCD, hyperfocus, obsession, or special interest. But these things are gifts, and if we're going to utilise the people in this world on the autism spectrum, we need to start looking at them, not that there's something wrong, but then something that they can do very right, and something that we need to start changing our lens to. So my hope is that when I talk to the different AFL clubs and coming out that I have autism, is that then there's going to be other AFL people that come out and say, I have autism, and then that will do that Ian Thorpe moment again. And also the other thing it will do is that kid that doesn't know anything about autism, or that adult that doesn't know anything about autism, is going to have that fear eliminated, because it's going to go, okay, they are doing something, they're okay, I actually have something in common with them, such as sport, and therefore I'm no longer afraid of autism. I also met with Prince Harry and Princess Meghan. Funny story is when I went, I was so nervous. I was like, oh, this is not good. I went in, all the bands, like this thing was playing, and I was just like, this is not okay. And then the guy and everyone else was like, this is so excited, how are you feeling? And I was like hearing all the sounds, and it was a horrible experience. And then the guy came, and he was very stiff, and he was like, when you meet Prince Harry, when you meet their Royal Highnesses, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, you need to not, which kind of made my processing really hard, but you need to not lean out your hand to shake their hand. You need to wait only until they shake your hand. And I went, and all of a sudden, like after all these things, such as you curtsy or you refer to them first by this and then second by that, all of a sudden, everyone else started going, oh no, I'm very nervous. And I went, autism for the win! I know what to do, and I can follow rules, and this is, like, it would have been better if I found it out beforehand, but I felt quite confident. So all of a sudden, there's strengths about having autism. So then they're meeting Prince Harry and all that, and they're going like that, and I'm just going, wait. Oh, he shook his hand. And like, that sort of stuff. Now, if you think that I am the exception to succeeding in sport, I am not. There are heaps of people that I work with. So Hope, when I first started working with her, she didn't go out of her driveway to ride a bike. But now I went on a camp with her, she participated in all the activities because we eliminated anxiety and ensured the environment was safe. And we've gone to bike rides to shopping centres. We've got Aiden, who has autism, who rode 5K. We have Oscar, amazing hyperfocus. He rode the Great Vic Trail, which is the second longest rail trail in Australia. Now that wasn't linked into my hyperfocus, so I was struggling even though I'm quite fit, but he just kept going. He's amazing. My other client, Anthony, he's got severe intellectual disability. Some would say he's non-verbal, but if you kind of listen, I wouldn't say that he's non-verbal. He was 123.8 kilos. He's now under 97 kilos. Now, I really did struggle with starting working with him. I thought, I can't do this, but people said no one else can lose this weight with him. Can you? And I went, oh, okay. So I was working with him, and I was really trying to go hands out, hands in, and it wasn't responding, and I was getting really nervous. And then I started playing music, and he starts going, and I was like, Anthony, my dude, you like music. So we started doing Zumba, and then from there, we start going arms up, and I had to actually wait for the processing time. It wasn't like mine, it wasn't like 2 or 3 seconds, it was more like 2 minutes. So I just say hands up, and then after maybe 30 seconds I'll say hands up, and then I'd start doing his hands, and he started getting there. Now one thing that I realised is that and I was like looking back, is that if I had changed the instruction, it would have kind of overlapped and sent him to overdrive. So Anthony, he can now do a whole hour of personal training. He knows push-ups. I stick to a routine. He knows it. Now if Anthony can do it, and he's amazing, but anyone can do anything. It's not sport, but it's still exercise, and it's definitely recreation. All these clients I work with, I've seen them in the last week, and they're amazing. They all have autism, and they're just super, super cool. And so I'm not the exception. It's just, what does success look like for them? Getting them where they're at and making sure we build, and by acknowledging what they just did, and then having that rapport with them, so then I can say, hey, remember that last time? Was that a time that you were feeling the same way as this? And then the confidence to go up. Like, what I've learnt looking back is that school didn't work out for me. I did finish year 12, but it didn't really work out for me because it wasn't linked in with my strengths. So this is like an indoor football or soccer boot wherever you're from, and that's neurotypicals. They can go in any service, feeling comfortable, maybe not excelling super high, or they might. You know, we've got to give them a chance. These neurotypicals, but they're just kind of, you know, they kind of go through. Where for me, I've got studs. Now going onto a surface that's hard, I don't have grip. It's really slippery. It's really uncomfortable. But if you put me on my terrain, which is a soccer field, funny enough, but I will be able to have grip. I'll be faster than anyone else. If we want to look at, terms such as cars, I'm a bit like a four-wheel drive, where other people are Formula 1 race cars. But if you want to get to like at the top of like a hill or something, I'll leave the neurotypicals behind. But you've got to be able to be flexible with the environment for me to be able to perform. So we've got to stop looking at autism as a deficit. Bit of a plug, active support, that's who I am. Look it up. That's enough processing time for that. And I do a lot of different talks. You can hit me up. I may or may not, possibly won't answer your phone call, but you can definitely email me on the email that I haven't provided. And my advice to athletes is to know your role, know your strengths, know what you're good at, know what you need to improve on, work out, maybe with the support, how you can improve it, have a good relationship with your coach, and never let yourself be seen as a burden, because if I can do it, and all these amazing people that I've worked with can do it, you can definitely do it. I used to think that I couldn't belong in this world because I have autism, and now I found my exact way to belong, and it's because I have autism. I have autism, and I wouldn't have it any other way, and that's it. Also, I just realised that I didn't keep up with, you know how I said I was going to do the chapters, but that's because there was no other chapters. But
Elise, thank you so much. Another round of applause. I think I've been to a lot of conferences and a lot of professional developments over the years, and it's very rare that you can look in the audience and not a single person has their phone out, and nobody is looking around. Everybody was listening to every word that you shared with us, Elise. I really like the statement pull-ups and not put downs, so I'd love to keep using that. I might steal that. It was really nice that you covered the sensory seeking and sensory avoiding, and I think for the people working in sport in this room, remember the spikes. It almost looked like a Canadian maple leaf, sort of, the red bit. It was quite beautiful. But by the time some students get to your sports at 4:30 in the afternoon, the things that they've been through throughout their day, maybe they've felt excluded in school, maybe they've experienced bullying, maybe they've gone through those troughs and spikes of being overwhelmed and super sensitive. So it's a lot that we're expecting coaches to do, and we're certainly not expecting anyone to be perfect, but do your best and just recognize that kids have been through a lot. And Elise, I think you started off saying that you just wanted to feel wanted and you wanted to feel valued, and I think that we're all very happy that you feel confident to share your experiences with us, and I think you're definitely wanted here. So thank you so much for your articulation and for sharing that.
Thanks.
Perfect. We ran a little bit over time, but who could ever stop the train that was running? So let's have a little, 5 or 7 minute break. Run off to the washrooms, and we've got some catering out there. And let's reconvene in 7 minutes if we can. We'll try to keep this train going.
Amazing. So good. You come out. How'd you know that was coming?
That was so good.
We will talk, Elise. You're coming as a special guest. You have to. Have to.
Usually my favourite bit. This might be all one of this.
Yeah, I'm kind of wishing Sean had put me on before you now, because now I'm just going to be really worried.
That's good. You're welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I took it off. Cheers. Sure.
So,
Still live, by the way.
Elise was saying we wish you could go to all schools and just do that presentation.
Yes.
Seriously, just
That one's a new one. That one I made today. That was that one I made today.
and I wish I could bring my 7-year-old daughter around all because that was just really
Live streamed and recorded
Live
on
streamed.
AAA Play,
Yeah.
so you can show
so I
her.
can play it to her tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do
Hopefully I
live,
wasn't
so people
too
hear
crazy.
you talk. FYI. You can still, it's alright. You can say hello to everyone at home. Hanging out. 4 people waiting for us to come back with Kellie Tait.
It's nice. Yeah, it's a bit crazy, but
And 3-hour PD session, and I got your email up there.
What was it again? I'm just going to write it down so I can show my daughter tomorrow.
AAA Play.
Yeah.
AAA Play is short for Access for All Abilities.
Yes. Cool.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I do.
yeah, okay, so would you take students, students up with some culture?
Absolutely. Exercise quiz, psychology, yeah, more and more social work, no? But
is she advocated?
Yeah, well, the
Good on
numbers
her.
are a bit different. That's all right. Trade room. Do you guys got a fridge, or do you just share?
Kind of. Yeah, we'll just, there's a catering fridge there.
Yeah.
Chuck it in there and we'll just
Well,
offer it up to
Cal's
stuff.
going to come get it in the morning, and I
Yep.
just said to her,
Yep.
if it's heaps,
Yep.
yeah.
Nah, divvied around the offices, you know they'll be happy with that, so.
Oh, right on. Good. Where are they? Where did I Yeah, we can Yeah, at the end we'll stick around for half an hour or something. I don't think we'll really go fast. Just trying to decide if I show the video about Ben and Mary yet. I might just show 2 or 3 minutes and then switch over to Kelly.
Some have to just appear.
You do?
No, I don't. I'm not staplers from Ballarat. That's what
Oh.
I'm in the
Okay, yeah.
You've got an hour and 40 minutes drive.
Oh my god. Alright, we'll round everyone up here soon.
Yeah, so just like off the bat.
Smart Kelly. I don't bring her out very
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah.
Didn't think that one out. Oh, yeah.
I'll give everyone a 2-minute warning. Or 1 minute warning, probably.
We need to figure out where we're going with this strategic.
Well, they are.
I reckon that's the way to go.
Nope.
We're talking about me doing a lot more training.
How's it looking from up there? Good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just opens up a wide range of networks.
We need to get together in a meeting. We need a meeting. There's a couple of things we need to discuss.
So I don't think it's, I know they fund these things, but you can pay yourself to attend it, like, they don't go, how do you spend this money, or how do you get?
Yeah, right, okay.
not-
So we don't have to justify where it's going.
No, you don't have to justify it. So you can turn around and go, well, I'm going to pay myself this.
Okay.
It's, the money is actually probably the smallest.
You need to talk to the board. You need to talk to the boys about this. See, we've taken all that out of my hands now. So
Whereas I think for you doing it, because they'll make it rich, I feel like they're seeking you'll get the confidence of like how
yeah, right.
and it's not
We agree.
There.
How do I change the slide?
I was hoping to get sort of assemble that 5 or 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I was wondering if I could email the video and then they can because I can email the video, but we can't email it. Or we can show them far off. Should we show the video now? And then we can... Yeah.
volume. This is what you sent me the other day.
Yeah, I showed it Maria and Ben's video. It's about 8 minutes, so I'll just email it to you.
Oh.
I don't know why we don't have sound. Possibly, if he's not far.
No, he's here. Is he in there? No, I'll visit
There's still learning these this week.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. We can put them up on the table as well. They're here. Yeah, do you want to grab this? We have a panel when we talk about it.
It's just really lovely for him to have his own sports something that he gets really excited about. Even within the school environment, it's given him a little bit more confidence to go off and do things by himself and not have to have us beside him all the time.
Elira absolutely loves it. It's given her time too, which I think she just loves.
If she was in a busy environment with a lot of other kids, she'd get a little bit lost, but because she's got the one-on-one help with AAA sports and the look on her face when she just kicks the ball, kicks the goal, or just handballs it, or just everything, and she'll constantly be looking up at you and putting a thumbs up.
I think Murray having confidence to be able to join in and play some really great games, and to play with other people and to meet new friends. Sophie's able to join in with the other kids and run around, have a go, not feel too pressured, at her pace.
Jimmy's skills since joining AAA have just grown enormously. He is so much more coordinated. He can catch and kick a ball. He can join in with his friends playing a game. You know, he can go down the street and play footy with his dad. It's just helped him out so much. And with school, we used to get notes from PE saying he needs a bit of a hand and needs a bit of extra help with this and that. But now, he's just up there with everyone else.
I think it's just a case of being able to get out and one play sport outside instead of being inside on the iPads and the Xboxes and the things like that. He just thoroughly enjoys it. It's just a matter of being out with a group of kids in his own age bracket and not being treated any differently than any other kid there. He's looking forward to that Sunday. He's looking forward to that point that he can go out and have a kick with other kids.
It's perfectly designed for children with disabilities, so therefore every kid is catered in a different way. Whether you're in a wheelchair or you can run fast, or you can't run fast, or you can't handball, you get the opportunity to do it the way you want. It's really individual to every kid, which is great.
The little touches that Kellie does at the end of the term with the medals and the certificate presentations and things, it's a pretty big deal. I think it's a pretty big deal for lots of kids, but it's an extra big deal for our kids.
As a parent going into this, I had no idea what to expect. He's got friends. He's developed such strong friendships, and that's just makes me, I'm getting teary just talking about it, but it makes me so proud to look at him. For me as a parent, I've met other parents. I have developed my own friendships and my own support groups because everybody's in the same boat.
Well, it's something we've been looking for years. Like it's to have a program that's set up for kids with special needs has just been it's hard to explain. It's just a godsend more than anything else. You want kids to play sport, and there's not always the avenue, or there hasn't been the avenue for kids like Thomas in the past. If you put him into a mainstream football team or mainstream cricket team, he's not going to enjoy it, and this is process of him enjoying sport, which is what I think is the greatest part about it.
Highlights is watching his smile and him wanting to get ready to go out. That is massive for us. He loves being not just part of the group, but being able to go out into the halftime matches and being out in front of the crowds. Like, I just never thought he'd be able to do that.
So Jimmy was able to go onto the NCG for the Ashes. Fabulous for us and for the family, and it was pretty exciting to see him on TV.
Sophie to be able to join in without me is a nice extra thing. She's very happy to see Kellie and the other staff and the kids and to go and play independently. Her coordination skills, so just learning to throw and catch a ball is a really big deal.
One big thing that he keeps talking about is when he went and played at the MCG with cricket. Now, you know, that's something he probably never ever have got the chance to do if he wasn't in this Triple A sports program.
It's been such a fantastic program that I probably can't speak highly enough of it.
So those are parents speaking about the incredible Ballarat AAA sports program founded by no other than your local Kellie Tait.
Hi everybody, I'll try and keep it as quick as possible for you. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Kellie Tait and I'm the mother of 3 amazing children, one of whom is autistic. My role here today is to share my journey with you and the journey of the family and the participants in my program who you've just seen on the video. So here we go, this is my story. In 2015, my world was turned upside down when my son Cooper received an autism diagnosis. Cooper has autism with comorbid anxiety, so very severe anxiety. It was honestly the worst day of my life. I was totally heartbroken, I was scared and really confused. I had no idea what it meant to have an autistic son, how I would be able to help him to live his best life, and I was terrified about what his diagnosis would mean for our family unit. I spent 12 months fumbling my way through specialist appointments, soaking in as much information as I could about how to help him get through his days. Those early days were really, really tough. Like Elise, Cooper's a really sensitive, sensory-seeking boy, so he would constantly throw himself into furniture, walls, more often than not me. So it was really tough on him, but it was also really tough on us as a family because we were copping the full brunt of his sensory overload. So one day I decided we'd take him over to the local park to kick the football around, see if we could release some of that energy. In that 30 minutes that we were on that local oval, Cooper completely changed into a child I hadn't seen before in his 4 years he'd been alive. He was laughing, he was smiling, he was communicating to us, his sentences were making sense. Things that we hadn't seen him do for 4 years. So in that moment I had this extreme false sense of security, I think, and was like, sport's my answer. Let's get Cooper into sport, this will help him. So with this false sense of confidence, I decided to take my active sensory-seeking young man to his very first Auskick session at a mainstream Auskick group. There were 100 kids and 1 coach at this first session. The wind was howling and the kids weren't paying any attention to the coach. They were screaming and yelling, wrestling and jumping around with their peers and having a great time. Cooper's anxiety kept building the longer that we stayed there. But in his eyes, I could see he really wanted to give it a go. Not surprisingly though, about 20 minutes later, our little man ended up in total shutdown. Stimming, crying, thrashing around, stripping his clothes off in the back seat of my car. We left early feeling heartbroken and defeated, but decided to try it again the following week because all he wanted to do was to play football. The second week started off a little bit better. Cooper promptly lined up behind the other 50 kids he had to wait his turn behind. Had his turn and then returned to the line where he swiftly got behind a boy in an Essendon jumper. He knew he had to follow the kid in the Essendon jumper. That's where he needed to be in his line. Unbeknownst to him, there was 5 kids in Essendon jumpers in that line, and so of course Cooper had pushed in front of the wrong kid, and then the bullying started. The other kids were calling him names, telling him to get back to where he needed to be, and he had no idea. After that, of course, another shutdown and meltdown happened for us, and Cooper ended up in tears in the back seat of my car, this time naked. So, in that moment, and leaving that ground that day, I didn't feel disheartened, I felt mad. I felt angry that there wasn't a place for my boy to play sport, that there wasn't an environment that was inclusive of him and supportive of him. So the following day, I contacted the AFL Goldfields here in Ballarat. Surely a big town like Ballarat had an All Abilities program, was my thinking. To my surprise, they said Ballarat had never had an All Abilities program, but they were really keen to start one and just needed someone to drive it. I still wonder to this day what was going through my head when I said yes, but I did, and that's where AAA Sport started. Probably should have moved on to the next slide. So I knew we had about 10 friends with children with special needs that would be interested in coming out and kicking a footy around. And I honestly thought that was all it would be. That very first season of AusKick that we started, we had 22 kids register for that first season. And it was so successful that I received a phone call from Cricket Victoria, who were interested in us doing a program similar for children in cricket. And so of course, again, I put my hand up and said, yeah, of course I can do that. And so I started a cricket program not long after that. Swiftly following that, we were contacted by soccer and then netball. And so we now run 4 sports through AAA Sports, which is really exciting. That first season of Junior Blasters cricket attracted 30 children, and from there we decided to add the soccer and netball. In the 3.5 years that we've been running, we've seen more than 160 children with special needs and disabilities come through our program from the Ballarat region. A lot of them are children from mainstream schools who are expected through school to play mainstream competitive sport that doesn't really match their abilities. They're children who would normally not kick the footy or play cricket at recess with their mates because of poor muscle tone, lack of coordination, or even just the lack of social skills to be able to interact with their peers during a match. It was really evident to me early on in my journey at AAA Sport Ballarat that there were a lot of children with really high needs that really wanted to be involved in sport. So it was important to me that we were able to support them to do this as successfully as possible. I didn't want to see other children lack the support that Cooper lacked at that very first AusKick session we took him to. We have children with cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, autism, ADHD, vision impairment, global development delay, and Fragile X coming through our program. And all of these present with really different challenges. So in late 2016, I approached Ballarat Grammar about the possibility possibility of us using their amazing facilities, and for their students to come into our program as community-based volunteers. This has been one of the most rewarding parts of AAA Sport, I think, is seeing the interactions between these high school students and our special needs kids. And I believe our success and the strong retention in numbers is highly due to the support that we get from these grammar students. It's instilled confidence in their program and our ability to meet the needs of the children so that the families aren't frightened by the prospects of them failing. I think as special needs parents, our natural instinct is to protect our kids, and I know I was reluctant to let Cooper be involved in something that required so much social interaction in the beginning. But honestly, forming this group was the best decision we ever made. I also feel really proud that we're helping to shape the image of disability in the eyes of these grammar students. The future employers, teachers, politicians, store owners of our community. For them to be able to see the ability behind these disabilities is a wonderful skill to have and makes me excited about what employment for adults with disabilities will look like in the future. The grammar students get so much from their involvement in AAA Sport, and it's often said to me that they enjoy it more than our special needs kids. And that's really evident at all of our programs, how much the high school students get out of it. There's been some incredible friendships between participants and students over the years, and as a parent, it's nice to be able to sit back and watch those incidental social skills evolve without us having to be there coaching them along. When we reached our second year, it was becoming obvious that the children's skills were developing really quickly with the extra support of the grammar kids, and that they soon would outgrow these grassroots programs. So I really wanted to develop a pathway program for them. I was lucky enough to be invited to match manage at the NCIC Carnival in Geelong, which you saw a picture of earlier. Thank you, Sean. And I was totally blown away by the amazing abilities and the carnival setup. But it really made me question why there was a big gap between grassroots sports and then these elite level disability athletes. So early last year, I decided to create two pathway programs. One was a Master Blasters cricket program for all abilities. It serves as a pathway for cricket into the NCIC Carnival, and we also started and developed a Kids Go from Auskick, do a pathway program into the feeder league, which was already established within the AFL. I didn't want these children to develop this love of sport with me in the grassroots level, and then to lose that love of sport because there was nowhere for them to go once they developed these skills. So we really wanted it to be important that these kids continue their love of sport through the years and not have nowhere to go with it. My vision from that very first season 3 years ago was to see more clubs around Australia adapt the same model that we use at AAA Sport. Engaging local high schools to volunteer in our programs not only strengthens the sustainability of the program, providing new volunteers each year, but it also helps to shape the future perceptions of disability in our community. Giving the volunteers a sense of these children's abilities and personalities, learning about their families and their supports, and giving them an insight that will only enhance their skills as they enter the workforce. And as you saw in the video earlier, it's not only the children at AAA Sport who benefit from being part of such a special program, their parents get the opportunity to take a break, to sit back and watch, to see their children succeeding at something that they never thought that they'd be able to succeed at. They get the opportunity to meet other parents who understand them and who get the troubles that they're having every day. When their child's in the throes of a meltdown, there's no judgment and there's a listening ear. My strategic plan for the next 5 years for AAA Sport aims to increase the number of children with disabilities participating in sport in an environment that's adaptable to their individual needs, to assist other clubs with training and practical strategies to engage children in sport, and provide specialised equipment to support them in doing that. We would love to see AAA Sport, all abilities clubs all across the country, and we'd really like to help other clubs achieve this. So I just have one really funny story about my son Cooper, and Elise made me think of it earlier actually when she was speaking. Last year we were lucky enough to be invited to take 12 of our participants down to the AFL to play at halftime on the MCG at the Richmond-Brisbane match, so it was a big match. We took these 12 disabled students down into the dugout, and if anyone's ever been down there, it's a pretty dingy old place and it's very noisy. There were 100 other kids down in the dugout at the same time, all very excited because they were all going out onto the MCG for the very first time. So there was lots of screaming, yelling, excitement. My 12 children were losing their minds, but in particular, Cooper was not coping at all. And being the wonderful autism mum that I am, I completely forgot his headphones. So it wasn't a great move. Anyway, by the time they moved us into a separate room where the children could be by themselves, all of them were completely sensory overloaded. But poor Coop couldn't cope. They'd given him this wind cheater that was 5 times too big for him. It come down to his knees and the sleeves had to be rolled up. And it was itching him and he's like this and he's trying to get it off. And he's saying, I just need to take it off. I'm like, you can't take it off, buddy. You've got to leave it on until we get onto the ground. Just until we get onto the ground. The AFL people were all watching me very closely. Just keep it on a little bit longer. And he was getting more and more agitated as we went along. We literally stepped to the grass of the MCG and Coop stripped his top off. Ran straight out into the centre of the MCG with no top on in front of 100,000 people. And the AFL are running around going, whose child is that? Whose child is that? I'm like, it's okay, he's with me. But that's what my boy needed in that moment to be able to participate. He went out there into the centre and he's kicking goals and he was having a great time. But that's what he needed in that moment. And I think that's a really wonderful story of what it takes to get you out there. And a few things that you said, Elise, reminded me of that story today. But yeah, he was happy and that was a good experience for him then at the end of the day. But prior to that, it was a nightmare. But anyway, thank you for listening to me.
Just a lot of information to take in, I think, and a lot to think about. Looking back, we started off with the research side of things, and we're thinking about the big sample sizes that we try to achieve, and we try to compare it to Australian norms and all of that, which is very important and really worthwhile. It's really good. And so we started really big and broad, and we've narrowed it down to the individual stories and into the story of Kellie as a mum, and that things don't always go perfectly as planned. But looking back through history, it's usually, especially often, it is the mums who really push the envelope. They see a solution, and Kellie is an excellent example of what she's done. I think Kellie talked very eloquently about the kids' benefit. Certainly the parents on the sidelines benefit, but I think overall, as a community, we all benefit because we become more diverse, more inclusive, and we're all more rich because of the work that you do. So thank you very much. I would like to invite our 4 amazing speakers up to the panel. 5 chairs, 4 speakers, so you can bring an invisible friend if you like. And I know, I think I'll start off with Steve, who has a little bit of, I'll be the first person to ask a question.
Yeah.
Is there any research currently recruiting participants that maybe some of the Fed Uni guys would like to speak about?
Thank you very much, Sean. A wonderful segue into Neve's research. She's looking at social connection and mental health in young adults who are in tertiary education, so TAFE and university, and particularly at their experience of letting other people know about their diagnosis and what impact that has on mental health connection. So please, please talk to Neve about it, and also if you know someone, a young adult that's in tertiary education that you think might be interested in participating in the research, it's online. So Neve's flyers are here, which shows you the link, and it's a matter of stepping through the link and the questionnaires on that. So please, if you're able to pass that on, we'd really appreciate that.
Thank you, Steve. And I can't express my gratitude, and I know Kieran and Stephen will agree that the hours that parents and families and adults with disability dedicate to research, usually unpaid of course, we really appreciate it. I had something like 1,200 people responded to my survey on Auskick. So I calculated that the survey was about 45 minutes to an hour, so I owe you guys about 1,200 hours of my time to pay back to the community. So I've got a few more of these forums to sort out in the rest of my career. So I wanted to show that beautiful photo because Cooper's got a top on, so that's good.
So there's a story behind that too.
Was that the same day?
No, this Cooper got asked to be the mascot for the Western Bulldogs match in Ballarat last year as well. And this was shortly after our bad experience at the MCG. So I had pre-warned them that he could definitely do it, but we would need to have the uniform in advance. It would need to be sized correctly, and he would need to be able to wear it and try it on for at least 2 weeks prior. So he was quite happy to go out in that one that day because it fit him correctly, and he got to wear his runners, so he was happy. But there was pyrotechnics going off, and Lockie Hunter did an amazing job in keeping him in check.
It's beautiful. And I think, it's really, we've got to give it a go. I think sometimes there was, at the Geelong Cats, they invited the AAA, the school from Nelson Park Special Development School, but nobody told the school that there was going to be pyrotechnics that day. And so the kids are walking out as the fireworks start going off, and it's like, why didn't someone tell us? Yeah. But a beautiful photo. Michaela, who is from Hockey Victoria, she is the All Things Inclusion and Diversity for Hockey Vic. She's got the talk box, I think it's called. Catch box, perfect, great. But I think Michaela's got something to tell us about hockey in Ballarat.
Oh, well, I don't know. Oh, that's really creepy.
Alright, so you can demonstrate how to talk into the catch box, please.
You don't need it too close, that's a good tip. So we're trying to, I don't need the camera as well. Sorry. So Sean said I look after all aspects of inclusion for hockey, so disability, LGBTI inclusion, women and girls, participation, and also a little bit of cold and Indigenous work as well. But one-man team, a bit hard to do all of them, so I try my best. So we've been doing some really good stuff within the specialist schools and the special development schools for the last 4 years, and we're hoping to transition the students from the schools into an after-school AAA hockey program. So keep an eye out. We are coming to Ballarat in hopefully the end of term 2, term 3 of this year. So don't have much more information, but keep an eye out. Hockey's inclusive, it's fun, it's for everyone.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
So if you think soccer and footy are fun, why not start swinging a stick around?
Sure, these motivators sound very inclusive.
No, it's fantastic. It's good. So we do have this really cool green catch box, and Michaela's going to throw it around the room. So who has the first question?
I'll have a go, but I won't be able to catch it. Yeah,
Josh can be your backup.
So I'll walk it to you because I play hockey, so my throwing skills are not so great.
You can try handball.
Your throwing skills are my catching.
Good team.
Not too bad. Okay. Kellie, is Cooper in mainstream school?
He is, yes.
And he handles that?
It has its challenges. He's coping reasonably well. We're really lucky that we're at a school that are very supportive of him. So yeah, look, it has its challenges. The school environment itself is a play-based one, so he's not confined to a desk. He can move around and choose his learning, which works better for him in the classroom. But outside in the playground, it's quite challenging for him because there's no structure in place for him in the playground. And so him trying to interpret what those other children want him to be doing is a nightmare, to be honest. Yeah.
He's very lucky because he's gorgeous, and I think it's very hard nowadays with children with any sort of disabilities, because you look at any child and they've all got some sort of a disability, no matter what it is. Very hard for all of them, really.
Yeah, I think every child has a name and a story behind them, and you know, strengths and things they're really good at, and there's things they struggle with, and I guess that's why I was really happy to hear. I chose the speakers, so of course I was happy. I really love the contrast between Elise sharing her mainstream sport experiences, but then sharing the clients that she supports in a variety of ways. And Kellie, of course, that there are the choice of the AAA specific program. Maybe some of those kids will build confidence and go into mainstream, but now there's that pathway through adolescence, and they can choose to play FIDA if they want. So especially some of the parents, some of the kids who go to mainstream school and they have to work really hard to just keep up, they might really love a AAA program, because then they can maybe start taking the lead, or they see that they can learn better in small groups, or especially with the support of the kids from Ballarat College, the ratio is almost 1-to-1, so it's fantastic. So,
and I would say that probably only 15% of the children that come through AAA sport are from the specialist school. The rest are mainstream school kids who aren't playing sport at school but really want to be, because they're not getting that opportunity through school, I guess. Yeah.
Amazing.
Chuck that box to the next person. Let's see how you handball.
Thank you. Andrew from Tennis Victoria. Great insight from all four speakers. I really appreciate it. Tennis Australia and Tennis Victoria are obviously a bit like Hockey Victoria. We're very much inclusive and all abilities as well. One of the questions I had, and one of the things going forward with tennis, Kellie, is how you took up from where you went to what's the training required for coaches to do the football? What did you do? Was there any training involved, or what did you do there?
No, we made it up. No, we actually did. Just make it up. So the six-a-side football that I've created this year is very loosely based on the nine-a-side AFL football. Look, I just wanted them to be able to learn that really basic game sense, and a lot of these kids' processing is really difficult. So we need to keep it really simple for them. So the AFL 9s that they already had is a really nice, simple version that they can follow. And I just, honestly, all of my programs, I just modify as we go for the kids. I don't think you can have a set rule about these programs. I think you just need to see who's there and what's working for them, and change it as you go.
Yeah. Change it. Just follow, change it.
Yeah.
Which, I think it's okay. It's important for coaches, and I said this at hockey just yesterday, was that we consider I guess the level of training we get through psychology undergrads, and we do a master's, or you might be a teacher and you do 4 years and then another 2 years, and you have 20 hours a week to get to know the children. and it's still hard to know exactly what to do, and we make mistakes as we go. And so for coaches and volunteer coaches that only have the kids for 45 minutes a week for a 6-week program, sometimes you're just trying to keep their clothes on, maybe, in Cooper's case.
Yes.
And trying to make sure that everyone's safe and feel welcome and having good fun, and then we learn as we go. And I think that's the importance of we're all in the same boat together, and that's why we have Michaela here, we have yourself here from tennis, we have Josh from 10-pin, we've got school teachers, we've got the teenagers that Kellie's working with, and so we'll all figure it out as we go. There's no real recipe. But that being said, you did do the work with the cricket club in Gisborne. So there is that recipe where you can contact Kellie or Elise as consultants to come in and do that hands-on stuff, because I think we have some really amazing online modules and coach tips and tricks, being from All Play Footy, L's Golf, L's for Autism Golf. We have Acing Autism Tennis. So it's great to have online modules, it's great to have books, but you need the expertise sometimes on the ground that have the grass stains on their shoes and they know what it's like. So I think one of the goals I wanted to achieve today was to get the names of Kellie and Elise out there and let you guys know they're not famous, they're not going to fly away overseas, and they're available to chat afterwards and to engage as consultants going into the future. So.
And I think sometimes going out to Gisborne to Scott wanted to start a program similar to mine, and just going out to Gisborne and being able to see those children in Gisborne in that environment and how they coped, we were able to come up with strategies that would work for Scott and for his program, which some of them were very different for mine. I don't use a lot of visuals at my program here in Ballarat because the children I have don't really need them. But it became really evident that Scott's kids needed those visual prompts. So we started implementing visual prompts and it worked a treat. So I think just being out and in the environment and doing that training and coaching there in the environment is the best way to do it.
And it's been, the biggest thing that I found really impressive was being adaptable, but hearing how your team just moved, like, what was it, 15 metres, or they just moved away just to make that accommodation. Yeah. I think the biggest barrier that I've seen is people not being flexible to make that accommodation. They're stuck, this is how it's done. So there was like a student that I worked with who basically they're up since 3 a.m. in the morning, so when they came to school at 9 a.m. they're starving. And so the adaptation is, we don't need to put in a fancy psych intervention, just feed the child lunch.
Thing is with autism,
that's it.
Yeah. With autism, I guess like for neurotypicals, the projectile it's like the more effort and time you put in, the more they'll progress. But with autism, it's kind of like you put so much effort and time, nothing really that you can see, the output isn't really there. And then all of a sudden it clicks, the motivation's there, the anxiety has decreased, and the processing is just on point. It matches, and then from there it's like not even just like that, it's like straight up, you've engaged the hyper-focus, and they'll have so much energy to put, like so much effort and time, and we'll actually progress more than what other people would. Maybe not in a sense of achievements, that's more, but in terms of how much we progressed as opposed to how much they've progressed from where they were. What were you talking about again? Sorry. Wait, what was
flexibility
that?
and moving things, the example
Yeah.
from just moving the huddle
Yeah.
a few feet so it's easier to hear.
So it's like working with someone with autism is an investment with slow return, but like so much, like, is it capital gain? Is that like the... Yeah, so much capital gain, like the output, it's like, it's an experience working with someone with autism, but you just got to have the open-mindedness, the confidence, not that you know how to help them, but that you can find out how to help them if you listen. And just the flexibility to it's an awesome thing. You're not going to find someone who's like more loyal, more quirky, and I learned so much by working with my clients, and also it's kind of just funny and fun and just really cool. Yeah.
It is really fun and funny. And I know Steve introduced us or reminded us of the term neurotypical, which some people on the autism spectrum is like. They're like, neurotypical just means you're a bit boring. And so I find it ironic sometimes we talk about people with autism. One of the diagnostic characteristics is a lack of flexibility or a high desire for routine, but it's the neurotypicals that are like, no, you cannot change that. That is the way it is. And it's the psychiatrists that are like, we have a book that's this big so we can categorize everybody on earth. And it's the people on the autism spectrum are quirky.
But let's not forget, neurotypicals get anxious too.
Yes.
So they seek routine.
And if you implement it, all it is for autism is that it's amplified. So if you help that person with autism, they're just amplifying the problem. So if you fix it and you kind of take out that spitfire before it gets into like a massive bushfire, I'm thinking bushfire because it was brought up today, but then you're actually helping so many other people in your sports team, in your classroom or whatever. So it's really, it's a gift. It's just always changing your mindset. And when I look at, that's it.
It's amazing. I really could listen all day long, Elise. Let's try to, it is 7:30 and I know people probably have to get home to their families and everything. But I would like to take 2 more questions, if we can. Laura?
Hi, I'm Laura from AAA Play. I'm actually just sharing something that's online and it's not even a question. Felicity Brown has just posted an expression of appreciation of the sharing of research, stories and heartfelt experiences. So thank you.
Thank you guys.
Pleasure.
I think we have some students here from Fed Uni who Kieran is forced to come. Any questions from the 4th
I'm
year?
sure one of them will have a question.
4th year psychology.
No, I won't put them on the spot.
I remember back in the dinosaur ages when I was in university.
What was that?
They might have the question, you just got to give them processing time.
I do have there was someone else I invited to speak tonight, Maria Strong, who's a woman who has cerebral palsy as well as autism, and we shot a video with her because she couldn't be here. She's off competing at a track event in Sydney. So if people are not running off really fast, it's an 8-minute video where Ben Carbonaro, who also has autism, has interviewed Maria. So is there another question for the panel before I put that question on, and then we can put the video on and we can have a chat afterwards?
This is for Elise, and it's to do with stimming.
Yep.
Yep, okay, so you brought it up. Should a coach stop you at any point or allow you to complete, your recharging before before the session's over? How would you best ask a coach to, do tweaks?
So stimming is a symptom and it's also a way to, a coping mechanism. So stimming, if someone's stimming, it's a symptom of something is either too much or too little. So too much meaning we need to get control, we need to create movement so that I have some control that's at a level that kind of overrides or is at the same kind of volume as the rest of the world, or that I'm really, really bored, which I'm not now, but I'm really, really bored and I need movement in order to, it's like, when people watch movies, have you ever watched a movie without like the music and you think it's so boring? Neurotypicals do it too, so that's what I'm doing. I'm kind of creating the music in the background to be able to listen, to make you interesting or something. And basically, if you stop that, and if you tell me to stop tapping, there's a story that I said in my another talk of, basically if you stop that, it's like putting a cap on like, when you put Mentos in a Coke and it kind of erupts? If you put a cap on it, you might go, peace and quiet, but what will happen, if not at that exact moment, maybe 5 seconds delayed, or there'll be an outburst, an eruption, but what happened is as I started to get older, people did say stop, stop, stop because it was disruptive, and by the time that I came home, I'd have like a big kind of meltdown, and the thing is, that's kind of, it's very, very uncomfortable, so it's a coping mechanism. What I can understand is that I find it distracting when there's a ticking of the clock or when someone's making noise that I can't control. So I will understand if you tell me, hey Elise, that tapping that you're doing, it's distracting your peers. So if you can give me, when I was younger, if you could give me an alternative, which wasn't given, or when I'm older and able to make my own strategies, such as the rolling of the soccer ball underground, under the table, then you're replacing it. The thing that kind of might be needed is if it's sound. When I was like you might want to click to the ear. It's obviously okay. It's that sound. Can we mimic that? So if I like do on the top of my tongue, like clicking, no one else can hear it, but I can hear it. So it's matching sound with sound. If it's movement, like jiggling of the legs, that's matching movement with movement. So don't stop because you're waiting. You'll get your an eruption's going to happen, but give an alternative that is something that I'm comfortable with. If you said something like blow on this whistle, I hate the whistle, and it's not really in line with what I'm going to do. In saying that, if he's told me to give me a whistle, he said don't blow on it, that's probably exactly what I do. But yeah, that's...
So what question could we ask that person to get to know what the alternative could be?
It's not really asking the question because they might be not as insightful of what's going on in themselves. You can ask them afterwards when they're at a calmer stage, but watch the person. So with Anthony, he wasn't able to talk to me. That didn't mean that he didn't have anything to say, and it didn't mean that he couldn't communicate. He was communicating with me, but I wasn't supplying that music. When I put the music on, it was actually a phone ringtone. It was actually the phone ringtone. I was unprofessional and do it, and he moved, and I was like, Anthony, like that's a connection. If you see someone flicking a pen, like that's the answer. Normally, what we find annoying is actually communication because it's not what we're used to.
So within my program, I'll answer as well if that's all right. Yeah. But within my program, what I would do in that instant would be to let them continue to stim. But I would step back and take a look at what's going on around that child, because there'll be something that's really probably setting that off to be that bad for them to stim. And you can either try to remove a few things to see if that helps and if that changes the way that they are, and if it doesn't help, just let them have their time to process. They'll come back when they're ready to come back, and I think we really just need to take away that pressure from them. So, but as a coach, my suggestion would be to step back and just have a look around. What in this environment can I change that might assist this child?
I thought it was interesting that Elise said recently this footy season, you've asked to be not part of that huddle. Maybe you get overstimulated, and so you've stood back, but now because you know that you have the safety mechanism of going back, now you're getting closer. Yeah. And it reminded me of the St. Kilda Saints Play program. They have a sensory-friendly marquee up at their Auskick program, and at first the kids would all run over to the beanbag chairs because it was a chill-out zone, and if they got overstimulated, it was a safe place to go. But then in week 3, the kids were like, yeah, it's there if I need it, but they didn't need it anymore, and so they could stay as part of that huddle with everybody else.
It becomes like a contingency plan, it becomes a backup, but the fact that it's there in the first place means it's safe for me to enter, and at the same point in time, by stepping out, I'm able to desensitize by starting to move closer and gradually get into that rather than go in, I have to, and everything's really big, but at the same time, I'm meant to listen. Yeah. And that. You were saying, so there was another thing that I want to say is sometimes it might not be the environment, it could just naturally be that I'm exhausted. Mm-hmm. And like if I had to, you could,
So I think
giving them that time is really important.
Definitely. So for some people, they respond really well to social stories with visual cues and actual photos or cartoon type drawings, but then we also use social stories all the time as neurotypicals. Just verbally, we can say, if you get overwhelmed, or it's a 4:15 start, 4:15 arrival for a 4:30 start, or we send out visuals of where the maps are if our computers work properly. So we use social stories a lot, and that helps us know, okay, I'm really, really anxious right now, but there is that safe place to go, or in 10 or 15 minutes, I can go have a chill out time. So let's have Mark at the back.
Sorry, Sean. I'd just like to thank you for bringing this to Ballarat today. Obviously, 2 hours away from where I live, at least it allows me to access it. And I thought, what a wonderful community
got the drive home.
But really do appreciate you coming to Ballarat. I think the audience here probably appreciates that as well. So thank you, and thank you to all the speakers. Kellie, it's the second time I've heard you speak, and wonderful again. Doing fantastic work in the community. And I like researchers because my son's researching at Ballarat University as well. Keep up the good work, guys, in psychology as well. So.
Perfect. And thank you for taking the 2-hour drive here. Laura, is there another question from online?
Yes, please. Kristen from Lacrosse Victoria has just asked, what do you think is the most important thing to make sure we do as a small sport starting in this space as well as in a new area?
So somebody getting brand new into it. Elise or Kellie, maybe? What do you guys?
I don't know what the question was.
So it's Lacrosse Victoria entering into the space of being able to provide lacrosse for people with disabilities in general, but I suppose specific to this autism.
I think my advice would be to create really strong friendships with the specialist schools in your area. That's a really great place to start to build, and they will come. You know, these kids at the specialist schools are getting the opportunity to play sport at a level that suits them, but in order to progress outside of that, I've used a lot of social media, and that's probably been the biggest driver for AAA sport, would be using our social media. And I said to Michaela earlier, I'm more than happy to put any of your flyers on our AAA sport page, because there's a lot of people following our page. But you know, I think those sorts of social media things are really important. Do unconventional things like buy, swap and sell sites where people are constantly looking, and people are going to say, hey, I know a child with a disability that might be interested in playing lacrosse in Ballarat. I'm going to send that to that child's mum, and then they're going to send it to someone else and go, hey, lacrosse is coming to Ballarat. So I think think outside the box a little bit, because that's where I do a lot of our advertising on those sorts of sites, and I would get 5 or 6 brand new kids every time I post on a buy, swap and sell page. Every time.
And I think as you and Elise both get better at self-promotion, you might say, contact us.
Or contact us, and we'll help
Consultancy.
you. Contact us.
Elise, did you have any advice for Kristen at lacrosse?
I'll just say something, and it's the entrepreneurial experience that I previously had. Start small and get feedback. So give it a go, get feedback from your participants. What can I change? What could I do better? And do it again next time. Get feedback, do it again, make it better. Don't think you've got to achieve it all, and just be adaptable.
That's a good one.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yes, please.
So just obviously we started a cricket program this year. We linked. First thing I did was linking with Kellie, because the key was the program we wanted to set up. We wanted to make sure that the parents were absolutely confident and comfortable from the word go. So we didn't want to go into sort of half-ass and not have that confidence around the program. So linking with someone like Kellie, who was so experienced in getting the program up, it meant that when we got going from day one, there was absolute full confidence in the program. And I think that's really important. So advice to lacrosse would be, you know, trying to get some experience in to set the program up right from the get-go.
And it's amazing, I think, seeing the progress of some of the programs, the Nippers program, Starfish Nippers, which is the inclusion arm of Nippers. They said at first, of course, Nippers has a huge danger element. You've got crashing surf, and you've got the sand is itchy and scratchy on people's feet, and it's a really challenging environment. At first, the parents are all hovering around, but then when they see how good the volunteers are, on week 3, the parents are just having a coffee and chilling out, and they have that buy-in and that confidence. So if you can plan ahead and have that higher level of confidence early on, as they have in the Gisborne cricket program, because they engaged Kellie early on, that's fantastic. I would like to wrap up, and I think just say one more time, I guess as researchers and as professionals, we are forever indebted to parents and people with autism who've given their time to us and their trust. And especially now it is World Autism Awareness Day, and I think celebrating, I think Elise did an amazing job taking us through that journey that she was ashamed, and probably in the 80s and 90s and in the early 2000s it was something that we were looking at. How do we cure it? How do we get rid of bits and pieces of this? And now today we have people that are really proud. They are proud autistic people, and as Kellie said, you go through an emotional roller coaster, you go through the unknown when your child is diagnosed, but there are amazing community members around, and I think when we're all in it together, we're going to have some really great community outcomes. And whether it's checkers or chess or a bushwalk or it's footy, hopefully everybody feels included in what they feel like doing. So feel free to stick around and watch this video featuring Ben and Maria, but one more round of applause for all the speakers. Thank you guys. Let's see if this will work.
Resisting the urge to turn around.
What kind of changes have you seen in disability sport, but more specifically in people with disabilities being included in sport?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest changes is that people are aware of that disability sport exists, and that there are pathways for athletes and swimmers with a disability. Because I think for most people, that is something they weren't aware of before maybe the Sydney Paralympics. And even after that, possibly not. I think for kids with a disability, particularly kids with a physical disability, growing up today, it's a quite different experience to what I had as a child, because I was doing that swimming in the 80s, when very, very few people had heard of disability sport. If you had asked me as a young teen, what would I be doing at age 48, I can 100% guarantee that the answer would not have been attempting to qualify for the World Championships in seated shot put.
So, what sports have you enjoyed the most over your time?
Even now, when I am the national champion in Paralympic seated shot put, I would still say that my heart's in the pool. I shouldn't say that too loudly because they want you to pick a sport and stick to it. But I enjoy throwing. I enjoy throwing a long way. Being able to get on a race runner and get around the track in a minute and a half is pretty cool, which is an alternative track discipline for athletes who have coordination impairments. So it's intended for that group of athletes who don't have the balance or coordination to run, but may not have enough arm function to effectively push a racing wheelchair. I mean, I'm going to have a go doing Run for the Kids on the race runner. I'm not looking forward to going up the Balti Bridge, nor to going down the Balti Bridge.
You also talk about the travel associated with being in sport. I believe you travel all over the place.
Yes, I live in West Brunswick, and unfortunately, my coach coaches at Casey Fields, which is in Cranbourne East. I don't drive. This has made for some extremely long public transport trips. But seated throws is such a niche sport that the number of coaches that are confident working with seated throwers is tiny. It's literally a handful in Australia. So yes, I go down to Casey Fields. I've been able to get this season, due to my NDAS funding, I've been able to get to all of the interclub competitions that I want to. I have not had to rely on other people to pick up my stuff. I found a private taxi driver who's very happy to cart a throwing frame, because throwing frames are awkward items to carry. You can't fit them in most cars. They're about 75 centimetres high, and with square top, with some foot plates and some casters hanging off, so they don't actually fit. And I and many other athletes use a pole. The pole is removable, but you need a wagon. You can't just put it in a normal car.
And I also believe you're an official as well. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I'm qualified as an official in 3 sports. I'm an official in swimming, and athletics and triathlon. Don't seem to get to do as much as I used to anymore, given that I'm doing more competing myself. But no, I have been official for about 5 years. I have officiated I've officiated a couple of national championships in athletics. I've officiated at Australian All-Schools in swimming. As well as officiating and competing, I actually coach. I coach athletics, mostly in schools, but I also do some for Essendon Little Athletics Centre and for Special Olympics Northern West.
And we're here at the Victoria University Sport and Recreation Centre.
Yes.
You work here as well.
I work here as a swim instructor. I also do a little bit of lifeguarding. But yeah, I work with children ranging from, I've done some baby classes. We have our level 1s who are mostly 4 years old. And then we have, at the other end, we have pre-squad kids and junior squad kids in their teens.
What would your advice be for other people who are on the spectrum or with cerebral palsy? It can be sport related or non-sport related. We can join it all together if you like.
I'm actually going to join it all together. And most of what I say will apply not to only to people with disabilities, but to people in general and parents of young people as well. And that is, try different sports. You don't need to specialise early. Try different sports. You'll find out what you enjoy. What you enjoy and what you're good at may change as you get older. There is something for everyone. It may not be the first sport you try. It may not be the second sport you try, but there is something. And if there are any primary school kids or young teens watching this, or parents of primary school kids or young teens watching this, keep that in mind. Have your shot put down and push forward.
Am I doing it right? Is that right? Let's do it.
Yep.
Like that? Is that right?
Yeah.
I'll have to try that move on the dance floor when I'm out and about another time.
Yeah, but I think you're doing try swimming movements too.
Alright, do that.
So, a really big thank you to Maria and Ben, who couldn't be with us tonight, but at least we could shoot a video, and a giant thank you to Andrew Weiss, the founder of My Sport Live, who's also an incredible autism dad. So Andrew felt very passionate that we should be able to do this video with Maria's schedule. The way the schedule was worked out, we could only shoot on Friday, and so Andrew worked all weekend editing that so we could have it today. So pretty awesome, so we could share Maria's story and showcase a little bit more diversity. You can see that diversity is pretty interesting, and Ben is different to Maria, and Maria is different to Elise, just like everybody else is different and unique, and we think you're cool, I think. So thank you guys for sticking around. If you have any questions that you want to ask one-on-one, please feel free to come up and ask. But have a safe drive home. Thank you.